Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, November 1st, and I am Gabriel Albornoz, President of the Montgomery County Council, and we start today's full council agenda with two important presentations. The first is a proclamation recognizing Carbon Monoxide Awareness Month by Councilmember Rice and County Executive Elrich.
Thank you very much, Mr. Council President. And as the Chief makes his way down and our County Executive, I just wanted to start off by saying thank you to my colleagues and my former colleague, now County Executive Elrich, who's always been supportive of this type of legislation that essentially ensures that we're protecting so many of our residents. Each year, approximately 400 Americans die from unintentional carbon monoxide poisoning, and more than 20,000 end up visiting emergency rooms and 4,000 are hospitalized due to carbon monoxide poisoning. The reality is that unfortunately we've lost members of our own Montgomery County community to carbon monoxide poisoning over the years. And it's something that with so many deaths in this county are preventable. And so the best way to protect yourself from carbon monoxide poisoning is by installing and maintaining, making sure it's up to date and that it's working, a carbon monoxide detector or CO detector that will sound an alarm before the gas is built up enough so that they can make you succumb to this. Keep in mind that, especially as we head into the winter months, 43% of fatalities from engine-driven tools, people who use portable generators, people who use gas heaters inside their homes that are the portable ones, all those kinds of things emit this carbon monoxide. And so it's really important that we're vigilant about this and keep ourselves aware and keep us and our families protected. In 2018, the Montgomery County Council passed Bill 23-18, the Carbon Monoxide Alarm Law, to promote carbon monoxide safety, education, and awareness due to the serious danger that carbon monoxide poses to our residents. And so, again, want to thank all of my colleagues, especially thank the Chief. He'll talk a little bit about what his troops do and how they've had to monitor carbon monoxide for themselves to keep our firefighters safe. But let me turn it over to County Executive Elrich for some remarks and then on to our Chief. Thank you, Mr. County Executive.
Thank you. So it's good to be back here talking about this again since we passed our legislation a number of years ago. And I want to thank Craig for taking the lead on that. I just want to emphasize that this time of year and this season, this becomes more of a problem. We have many families that are struggling, as we know, to pay bills right now. And in the winter, when it gets cold, the easiest way to minimize your bill is to heat a room rather than heating your entire apartment, and sometimes with a gas heater. Using a gas heater that's not properly ventilated inside of a closed room is a problem, and it's going to lead to more deaths. And we're especially concerned, given what's happening with rents in the community, that people may opt to save money on their gas bills by using these small heaters. So this is especially important this year, and we have to let people know that this is not a good way to save money. And I just want to emphasize that because we are in difficult times for a lot of families. We're seeing it in people coming into the county asking for assistance, and we want to be sure they don't do something that endangers them while they try to keep warm. And the county does have assistance programs to help people who are struggling to meet their bills, as do the utilities. So before one turns to this, it would be preferable if they try to get the assistance they need to keep themselves safe. Other than that, I think that's the most important message I wanted to get out this morning is that you have a choice and you can do this safely. Please do that. This will kill people. Be especially vigilant of your own appliances. If your gas heater goes out or your pilot goes out on your stove, you need to be aware of that because all those things could put you at risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. So I'll stop there, and I guess the Chief.
Thank you, County Executive Elrich. Carbon monoxide is identified as the silent killer. Colorless, odorless, there is nothing that human can sense or determine that there's carbon monoxide presence in your house. That is what makes this legislation, what makes the presence of a carbon monoxide alarm so critical and such a savior to folks when they're most vulnerable. As both the executive and Councilmember Rice outlined, the uptick in use of portable heat devices, anything that's added through a fireplace or heaters, even using your stove or cooktop as an alternative heat source, that all translates into a rise as the weather gets cold. Anything that produces a blue or orange flame, anything that has a visible flame, blue or orange, has the opportunity to produce carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is the byproduct or a derivative of incomplete combustion of a natural gas or a fossil fuel. Additionally, one of the very important things that was written into this law is enclosed vehicle parking spaces, garages, by general description. Again, car exhaust contain carbon monoxide. And if you have a residence, single family, multi-family, where there's an enclosed car parking spot, a garage with a closed door, an accidentally left running vehicle producing carbon monoxide will overcome the family members, the residents in that house, and has been an example in our community before. So it's very important if you have appliances that use carbon monoxide producing appliances, blue or orange flame, natural gas, propane, or wood material, raw wood materials, pellets, fuel stove, or you have an enclosed car parking area. The law outlines that you need to have this silent sentry present and helping you. As Councilmember Rice outlined, these things have a service life, just like our smoke alarms do. Some of them are available in the 10-year sealed battery as well as smoke alarms are. And they are there because when you are asleep at night, you're your most defenseless. You're going to be the most impacted by a leaking carbon monoxide. The frequency of our crews being called for somebody who has flu-like symptoms, because that's one of the first traits of somebody calling, saying that they're feeling sick, that they have a flu-like symptoms, and don't know why. We walk in with our EMS bags, our first aid equipment, and on all of our EMS equipment, there's a silent, we call it a canary detector, but a detector on each of our EMS bags specifically for carbon monoxide. We will walk in to your house and greet you and talk to you about your flu-like symptoms, and our alarm will start going off on our bag. And that is our first indications that there's a problem in this structure. And we will then engage, bring different detectors in, and that is what we have found, both in calls for service, as well as just going into different commercial establishments. We've had crews walk into a facility and their alarm goes off, and nobody in that facility knew anything about a problem there. Where folks can get those, as the executive outlined, rental assistance as well as utility paying assistance, 311. Reach out to 311 if you're a resident in the county and you need to have a carbon monoxide alarm. 311 will come out, we'll help you install, help you get carbon monoxide alarms so that you're protected and that you can have that peace of mind of having that great detector. So this legislation just continues what the county started 43 years ago when we did smoke alarms back more than a minute ago, but it's a great thing to help our community. So thank you both.
Thank you very much, Chief. So I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation. It says, whereas carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless, poisonous gas, commonly known as the silent killer, that can be fatal for humans and animals and typically leaks from faulty, improperly used, or incorrectly vented fuel-burning appliances, such as furnaces, stoves, water heaters, fireplaces, or from generators used indoors when power outages occur and after severe weather. And whereas more than 400 people die in the United States every year as a result of accidental carbon monoxide poisoning, many of whom mistake the initial symptoms for the flu, which includes headaches, dizziness, shortness of breath, fatigue, and nausea. And whereas the County Council unanimously passed Bill 2318, requiring existing single-unit, two-unit, and townhouse dwellings to install carbon monoxide alarms outside sleeping areas and on every level of the home effective July of 2019, thus expanding the scope of homes required to install the life-saving device. And whereas this additional protection is a result of a cross-agency collaboration and support from organizations such as Montgomery County Fire and Rescue, Department of Permitting Services, multiple housing associations, who have all committed their unique resources to educating residents and preventing the loss of life from carbon monoxide poisoning. Now, therefore, do we, Mark Elrich as our county executive, Gabe Albornoz as our council president, and myself hereby proclaim November of 2022 as Carbon Monoxide Awareness Month in Montgomery County, Maryland, and urge all residents to test their carbon monoxide detectors at least once a year and ensure their gas appliances are working properly and vented correctly. And for those who don't have a carbon monoxide detector, please make sure to get one. Signed this first day of November in the year 2022.
Hey, Pete. All right, thank you so much. And our second proclamation is a proclamation celebrating Veterans Day, presented also by Councilmember Rice and County Executive Elrich.
So this is a twofer for me today. And so I want to start off inviting up, and Council President, you're here for this one as well. We have our Commission on Veterans Affairs Chair Wayne Miller, our Commission on Veteran Affairs member Bill Gray. I think we have Senior Advisor for Congressman Raskin's office, Krista Burton, who's with us, I think. Is she? Yep, there we go. I want to start off by saying this. I just had an opportunity to interview Bill Gray, one of our veterans who's on our Commission on Veterans Affairs. We had a conversation about what it meant to him to acknowledge the service that so many of our folks in the armed forces have given for this country. We often utter the words, "Thank you for your service," but don't think about what it means, about the sacrifice to individuals who come back not as whole as they left, who suffer from the mental trauma of fighting in wars, who suffer from the family issues of them being gone for so long, putting country before their family. For so many who've lost loved ones on the battlefield that they'll never see again, their true friends. We have 42,000 veterans who live here in Montgomery County. My father is one of them. I saw the sacrifices that he made as a young man, and I still see them today. Because the impacts that war and serving our country have on individuals is great. And so when we have an opportunity to recognize, to support, and lift up these individuals who gave of themselves, we should do it with all of our might. And so we have a national campaign upon us, which is called the Operation Greenlight Campaign. And it encourages residents, businesses, and government entities to display green lights to recognize and support their veterans in their community. I became aware of the Operation Greenlight through my work with the National Association of Counties and brought it to the attention of the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs, which embraced the opportunity and is prominently featuring this initiative on their website. Montgomery County will also be participating. I talked to the county executive and to the Commission on Veterans Affairs. I want to shout out Betsy Luking. And they're going to be participating by lighting up Memorial Plaza in Rockville to honor veterans during the week of November 7th through the 13th. And most importantly, highlighting the services that we provide as a county to veterans. So many of our CVSOs in our region, those who are serving our veterans and helping them to navigate the process of getting medical, mental treatment, some of the financial resources that they're owed, is incredibly important. And we want to make sure that every single veteran knows those resources that are there for them. And I want to pause for a moment and thank our congressional partners. At the congressional level, Congressman Raskin, Congressman Trone have been incredibly supportive as our Montgomery County representatives. But I want to give a special shout out to Senator Chris Van Hollen, who has been working tirelessly to ensure that with VASH vouchers, those are veteran vouchers that ensure that those that are experiencing homelessness can actually get back on a stable pathway to being housed, is incredibly important. And Montgomery County is one of the only counties in the nation that has functional zero for our veterans because of those VASH vouchers. Incredibly important. And when President Biden just on this past August signed the PACT Act, it initiated one of the largest expansions of VA benefits in history. This includes extended VA healthcare enrollment eligibility to Vietnam era, Gulf War era, and post 9/11 veterans. But we need to make sure that the message is out there to all of our veterans that they are appreciated, that they are loved, that they are supported, and that we've got you because you had us. So with that, I'll turn it over to our county executive.
So thank you. Let me tell a quick story because I see Bill here again. Bill and I go back a long way. We go back to the end of the 60s. And Bill arrived at the University of Maryland campus and at a post office we were working on. We were putting lockers in the post office. And he was a Vietnam vet, and I think you guys could probably guess I was an anti-war protester. And we worked side by side and became friends despite differences in where we came from, because I think the important thing is to see people as people, and particularly in terms of soldiers, soldiers do their job. They're asked to fight, they're asked to go out and defend their country, they do their job. We don't always agree on the wars, but you shouldn't disagree about how veterans get treated. If they've been asked to serve, they should be treated and get whatever they need to recover from the damages of war. I had other friends who went through that war and were emotionally scarred forever. That the things they saw and things they had to do left them struggling to cope with life. I've seen this up close and personal, and I feel like we have an obligation, a strong obligation, to make sure that our veterans are taken care of. The county's taken another small step in expanding our contracting, our procurement programs to give veteran preferences, to help this group find jobs and be able to get work in Montgomery County. We think that's important. We know that veterans disproportionately die younger, sooner. They disproportionately experience mental illness. They disproportionately are homeless. They have lots of things that disproportionately hit them, and at the same time, they disproportionately served the country compared to people who did not have to go through the wars. So I feel an obligation. I'm proud of the work we've done. Thank you for bringing this program to Montgomery County, and hopefully we will continue to make sure that the county does as much as it can to help veterans cope and help veterans move forward, and we're here to help. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and say thank you. I would be reading this, but I've had drops in my eyes, and everything that small gets really blurry right now. So, but I do thank you for giving me a moment to come up and speak today. And thank you, Bill, for friendship over many years.
Well said. I just want to add some comments that on behalf of my uncle Patricio, my cousin John, and one of my best childhood friends, Todd Benke, who are all veterans, I really just want to express my deepest appreciation and thanks to our veterans, especially here in Montgomery County. The Commission for Veterans Affairs does a fabulous job of ensuring that we provide and connect our county government, the services that our veterans need and frankly deserve. So we can never be thankful enough for the sacrifices, and I think we often forget we have an all-volunteer military force. And for those of us that come from countries where that's not the case, it's something we should never lose sight of. So thank you for being here for this proclamation, and we need to continue to recognize our veterans every day.
Chair Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President, County Exec, Mr. Reed, and the Montgomery County Council. My name is Wayne Miller. I'm a combat wounded Vietnam veteran. And I've lived in Montgomery County my whole life. And I've never seen a county love its veterans as much as Montgomery County has. And let me give you a few things that was not already explained to you about the county. The county of Montgomery County will never forget those who lived in Montgomery County, who served this country and who have died for this country and who are serving today. At the Rockville Library, there's a scroll of names and pictures of all those veterans who served that have been recorded from World War II, World War I maybe, World War I, all the way to present, my name included. At the Civic Center, there's a new Apple TV that was just put up that honors all of those. It's the Buffalo Soldier Hall that honors every day. Their names are scrolled of all those Montgomery County heroes that have served this county. We also were responsible for getting a clinic in Montgomery County to serve those veterans who couldn't go to D.C. It was a horrible drive to Washington, D.C., and the county was very, the council, Montgomery County Council on Veterans Affairs, was very helpful in that, also with Van Hollen and Ike Leggett, who was a Vietnam veteran, and Reichert, and I'm sorry for rambling on, but it's just absolutely wonderful. We have a Silver Spring Vet Center that provides mental health services for all veterans and their families: post-traumatic stress disorder, military sexual trauma, suicide prevention. I'm the director at the Silver Spring Vet Center. We provide services every single day for veterans. Montgomery County also has worked very closely with the Stephen A. Cohen Clinic, who provides services to veterans and their families when they can't get services at the VA or may not be eligible. We also work with severely and disabled and temperature sensitive folks at the Seneca Park with kayaking. We're also responsible and support the canine warrior with the canine dogs. The love that comes to our council meetings, everyone there has a love that we didn't get when we came home from Vietnam. This county is our welcome home. God bless America, and thank you for letting me speak today.
All right, we're going to go ahead and read the proclamation. So, County Executive, Council President, County Executive will be on this side. I'll start off. Whereas this year, Veterans Day marks the 104th anniversary of the armistice, and we again pay tribute to those who have served our country and this community in the armed and uniformed forces, and
whereas Montgomery County extends our deepest appreciation to the members of the armed and uniformed forces past and present, and their families who sacrifice so much to keep our country safe and strong. And
whereas approximately 200,000 service members transition to civilian communities annually, and whereas there is currently an estimated 36,000 veterans living in Montgomery County that we work to promote their well-being, and
whereas a grateful county recognizes that service members may be a challenging transition to a civilian life, and whereas studies indicate that 44 to 72% of service members experience high levels of stress during transition from military to civilian life, and
whereas Montgomery County has joined the efforts of the National Association of Counties in recognizing Operation Greenlight for Veterans in their mission to show support for veterans and raise awareness about the challenges faced by many veterans and the resources that are available at the county, state, and federal level to assist veterans and their families, and
whereas a part of Operation Greenlight, which is a national initiative to support veterans, Montgomery County will light in Green Memorial Plaza in Rockville from November 7th to the 13th to send a clear message to encourage county veterans to reach out to Serving Together and other veteran service organizations for benefit information and other services. Take us home, Councilmember Rice.
Now therefore do we, our County Executive, Mark Elrich, our Council President, Gabe Albornoz, and myself, do hereby proclaim November 7th through the 13th in support of Operation Greenlight for Veterans in Montgomery County to be a time to salute and honor the service and sacrifices of those who serve in uniform transitioning from active service. We encourage businesses and residents to join us in displaying a green light and recognize the importance of honoring all who have served. To all of our veterans, welcome home.
All right, thank you everyone for those two important presentations this morning. We now continue with the rest of our agenda. Just a point of privilege, special shout out to all the parents who had to get their kids out to school this morning after Halloween. I think it should be made a national holiday. It was a little bumpy this morning in our house, but we did make it. So, Madam Clerk, do we have any agenda changes or announcements?
Yes, good morning, Council President, Council Vice President, Council members. We have a few changes to announce. The first, we added item 6B at 11:45 this morning. It's an action resolution to address and combat anti-Semitism. We have a few corrections on item 6A. It's a supplemental appropriation to the county government's FY23 capital budget amendment to the FY23-28 CIP, $750,000 for Montgomery County Public Schools technology modernization. We've added a number of items to consent. Item 6K is an introduction to the supplemental appropriation 23-22 to the county government's FY23 operating budget, Department of Health and Human Services, $3,551,720 for American Rescue Plan Act, Older Americans Act, Title III, and amendment to the county government's FY23 resolution 19-1285 Section G designation of entities for non-competitive contract award status. We've added item 6L, which is an introduction of a supplemental appropriation 23-21 to the county government's FY23 capital budget. an amendment to the FY 23-28 CIP, Department of Correction and Rehabilitation, $500,000 for Montgomery County Correctional Facility, sewer. The source of funds are GO bonds. We've also added consent item 6M, which is the introduction of a special appropriation 2319 to the county government's FY 23 operating budget, Department of Health and Human Services, $853,699 for the Youth Harm Reduction Initiative. The source of funds are general funds and designated reserves. We've also added item 6N, which is a special appropriation 2317 to the county government's FY 23 operating budget, Department of Health and Human Services, $1,593,442 for newcomers enhancement and assistance. The source of funds for this is general funds, undesignated reserves. And we have our final addition, which is item 6O, and it's an introduction to the supplemental appropriation 2325 to the county government's FY 23 operating budget, Montgomery County Public Schools, $2,671,890 for Supply Chain Assistance Fund. The source of funds for this are state grants. The council also received 3 petitions this week. The first is petitions from residents of Montgomery County opposing Thrive Montgomery 2050 plan. We received 23 names. We also received a petition from residents of Montgomery County opposing ZTA 2201 antenna on existing structure use standards. We received 192 names. And the third petition we received from residents of Montgomery County opposed the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. We received 217 names. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. There are no minutes for approval this morning, and so we will now move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the council sitting as the Board of Health. I'd like to invite Dr. Crystal DeVance Wilson, the chair of our Commission on Health, and all of the other representatives who are here to speak on this important item this morning. Dr. DeVance Wilson, yes, wherever you'd like to sit. I want to begin by thanking you and the Commission for your continued dedication and leadership. My colleagues on the HHS committee and I have enjoyed working with you and really enjoyed your presentation before us just last week. Also want to acknowledge that we are very excited to have received the nomination of Dr. Keisha Davis to serve as our next public health officer, but certainly recognize the outstanding work of Dr. Bridgers and the entire public health team who have not missed a beat since Dr. Gales' departure. And we will be interviewing Dr. Davis on November 15th, and then we'll be voting on that nomination later in the afternoon so that she can get started with her important work. But Dr. DeVance Wilson, I'll now turn it over to you.
Good morning, council members and President Albornoz. Thank you again for having me. It seems like we were just together a few days ago. I'd like to take this opportunity to share our Commission on Health FY23 priorities. I was encouraged by the HHS meeting last week, and I would be remiss if I did not recognize the committee for its vision, enthusiasm, and openness to our new ideas. As always, I want to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Bridgers, Dr. Rogers, and the outstanding public health services staff who support the Commission every day. The Commission has identified 3 priorities this fiscal year, including access to care, environmental health and education, and public health administration. As we've done in the past, health equity and data modernization are core to our priorities. Our advocacy in the area of access to care includes building capacity to the public health workforce and public health programs in order to enhance public health clinics, school health clinics, behavioral health services, and immunization efforts. We support increased funding to create new programming and prioritize programs and services and resources which aim to resolve inequities in access to care. Our second priority is environmental health and education. I think everyone here is aware of our exposure on a daily basis to environmental toxins, air quality is compromised by carbon monoxide, which we just talked about earlier, lead and other pollutants. Water is contaminated with fertilizers, pesticides, and plastics. Even the clothes we wear and the skin products we use contain harmful contaminants. Montgomery County residents should be made aware of these hazards, and the Commission is asking that the county explore opportunities through public health services and other DHHS departments to raise awareness about environmental health risk. The Commission is advocating for tactical and strategic discussions with government and with community stakeholders. We also support planning and work between government departments and the development of environmental health education, which should be widely disseminated using a variety of communication strategies, including but not limited to social media, television, and print materials. Our last priority is public health administration. And despite the efforts of DHHS and public health services to improve health access, expand health services, and maintain a stable public health infrastructure, persistent barriers created by limited human and financial resources, the inability to fully monitor and evaluate programs, and the limited data capabilities are an impediment to the department. For these reasons, the Commission is advocating for the development of data management systems to monitor and analyze current health care programming, improved sharing of information and data between departments and community stakeholders, and promoting synergistic and complementary relationships between sectors and departments, which we believe will result in an engaged and empowered workforce, innovation, and increased productivity. Thank you so much for listening today. We take our role as commissioners very seriously, and your support is much appreciated.
Thank you so much, Dr. DeVance Wilson. I had a couple of questions, some of which
Certainly.
I asked you when we had the opportunity to meet a few days ago, but for the benefit of my colleagues. Would just love to follow up, and what message would you like to give to our incoming public health officer, and what would you like to, as a commission, and maybe even you personally, work on with her?
Well, as I said the last time we met, environmental health is very important to us. The public health workforce is another important factor. It's something I did not raise, but obviously all of these wonderful programs that we propose need somebody to implement them. So that would be important. We also would like to ask questions about access and opportunities and strategies that she would use to increase access, working, of course, with the County Council and with the Commission on Health. We've asked commissioners to compile a list of questions that we hope to provide to you all to ask the nominee, and so they'll be much more in depth than the ones that I am posing here, but we look forward to that time where we can get a broader sense of our concerns addressed with her.
Thank you so much. And one other question, I know that the issue of mental health continues to permeate throughout so many different communities, and particularly on the heels of COVID, that so disproportionately impacted our Black and brown communities in particular, as well as our disability community.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about just the Commission's perspective and views on potential solutions or programs or initiatives that you see out there in the mental health space that you think the Council should be focusing more on?
Well, one of the Commission's big concerns about mental health is workforce as well. I think that we're all aware that mental health capacity in terms of providers and counselors and things like that is just like many other health professions, but we need more people to deliver this kind of care. The Commission is very concerned about the after effects of COVID and the impact that, the mental health impact that it's had on our children, our families, and just workers in general. It's been hard to readjust to COVID afterlife after being locked down for 2 years, and the Commission is very aware of that and supports any efforts to increase capacity to deliver mental health services. So we have, in fact, been talking about mental health among children most recently, but as you can imagine, have had many conversations about mental health among our residents.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've got several colleagues in the queue. I have Councilmember Jawando, followed by Councilmember Rice, and then Council Vice President Glass. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, and thank you for the report. And appreciate the work of the Commission during a very difficult time the past couple of years.
Yes.
The issue of, you highlighted one of your areas are concerns and disparities, right? And we have this persistent and in some cases growing disparities in a number of areas. I mention this because I think it's, we had the fire chief here earlier. This would be a 5, bell alarm if there was such a thing, that 90% of the HIV cases that were new last year in Montgomery County were of black women. 90%. While we have HIV rates going down, which is a good thing, that's a massive disparity.
Oh, yes.
And it underscores there's other disparities with other communities that are egregious as well.
Yeah.
And my question would be, I've talked to the Commission, you all about this. What have you brought to the fore as a way for us to not only focus on those disparities but address them, and what recommendations do you put forward? We've been talking about this, and I think we all have some ideas, but I'd love you to illuminate that for the residents who are watching.
Thank you, Mr. Jawando, for your question. Last year, the Commission did submit a letter regarding the STI rates in the county, and HIV, of course, is among them. We have recommended more action in our schools and in our community clinics, and even with our private providers to not only treat STIs, but also to screen for them. That has been a huge issue, especially we see increased rates among women, but I don't know how often we really screen men. Mm-hmm. So screening is a huge opportunity for us, and I think across the board we can increase screening and at least be more aware of people who are infected with STIs, including HIV, and get them to treatment quicker, and even prevent some cases of HIV and other STIs. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. One of the things that I'll ask our public health director when we interview her, or to be the candidate, one of the things Dr. Gales had talked about, and Dr. Bridges and others, and Dr. Kroll, is the need for more epidemiological
Absolutely.
staff and to dig into it and to respond to those issues. Do you agree with that recommendation?
I wholeheartedly agree with that recommendation. We need more, at least another epidemiologist, but also somebody to help with data management. And the Commission has also submitted to the Council letters about increasing the capacity for data management, and has specifically requested a position to help with managing data. One of the things that we talk about at the Commission is, yes, we understand that everybody has to kind of order their priorities, and I think our dilemma is that it's difficult for us to see how we're ordering our priorities, using our resources in a way that we know is beneficial if we don't have good data. I mean, how can you know where the needs are? How can you know who needs more without having reliable data that you can depend on? And when you don't have the staff, an epidemiologist or a data support person to help with that, obviously you're going to be lacking in those areas. I mean, we've had to do some little fixes just for our own work at the commission in order to generate data. Just relying on reports from different factions in the county, doing our own research, using key informant interviews. But really, it would be wonderful for us to be able to just get those kinds of information on a regular basis and easily accessible without us having to generate and compile this information on our own. So we're a little creative, but I don't think we should have to be.
I appreciate that. I appreciate your ingenuity, and I agree with you. And we will work on that. I think there's such a shared imperative. Thank you very much. Thank the
you,
commission
sir.
on our behalf too.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm going to pick up where Councilmember Joando ended. Look, one of the challenges I think is that men don't traditionally get tested and aren't recommended to be tested like women are every single year. And so those numbers, when it comes to detecting STIs, will be significantly higher. And so it is November 1st. It is the beginning of Movember. And I say this every year as my childlike mustache is trying to come in. I don't do a good job of growing facial hair like some of my colleagues, but I will say that this is the month in which we try to make sure that we remind our men to go and get tested. We don't talk about it enough, and I think it's reflected in the data that you just talked about, the data that Councilmember Joando talked about. So everything from prostate cancer to breast cancer to STIs, to making sure that you have your physical. All those kinds of things are important. And so I encourage all of our men to please go and get tested this month if you're not going to do it any other time, because this is really important for us. Because here's the thing, STIs, unless all of those women are just having sex with women, of that huge rise, they're either getting infected or infecting other men.
There
right?
you go.
That's the reality of how it works. And so from that standpoint, we've got to be vigilant. We've got to be vigilant in saying that we're going to make sure that if we want to stamp this out, that we have folks get tested. And so we need to eliminate the stigma. And so it was great that I know Councilmember Joando participated in it. I know I participated in it. I think there were a couple other council members who participated in it by getting tested for HIV. I took my test for HIV. And I encourage everyone to do the same. Please do not be afraid to do that.
I agree.
Whether a heterosexual or homosexual, whatever the case may be, it does not matter. All of the recommendations, and so I just want you to talk to me a little bit, because so many of the recommendations isolate homosexual men. When the reality is that our focus should be on everyone. I think that it's outdated and quite honestly prejudicial of how we treat some of our members of our community by saying that some should get tested and some shouldn't, when we wouldn't do the same for COVID or for anything else that's out there. And so from that standpoint, can you just talk a little bit about what the Commission on Health sees when it comes to testing and what you'd like to see happen for our greater community as a whole?
Yeah, I think that we haven't been, it's no secret how we feel about testing. We do believe that everybody should be screened for risk that will affect them. And I have to say that screening men for STIs, for example, and HIV as a regular practice is just not something that is done. It's a little uncomfortable to talk about and things, but as you said, the way it works is that, you know, if you are having sex with a woman who is infected, well, you might be too. And these things spread, and so it just makes sense to have things in place to address these issues. I think that we have to talk about it more. At the commission, we have discussed this more and have asked for more opportunities to be created, as I said, in schools, in private practice, in our clinics, and everywhere that we can take advantage of opportunities to screen. You and I were talking last time I was here just about those home screening tests, just like the home COVID test. Okay, you don't have to show me or anybody. Go home, take this test, and if it's positive, then contact your provider. We have options. I just think that the conversation needs to be started and we need to take action. And I think that it extends beyond STI screening. We need to also screen for other chronic illnesses and others, because as Mr. Giwando pointed out, these things do not happen in isolation. Just because you're not screening for them doesn't mean it does not exist. So we, in order to better treat our constituency, we need to at least be aware of the existence of whatever illness, STIs and others.
Well, thank you very much for that. And I just want to close by making sure that all of my men and women who are listening to this, for the millions that are watching at home, that STIs increased by 28% in 2021. 28% increase in sexually transmitted infections. If you think you want to gamble with a 1 in 4 increase and that may not affect you, okay. But for all those that are buying Powerball tickets, now that the jackpot's over $1 billion, if you believe in that kind of luck, also believe that you could also be struck with some bad luck by running across the wrong kind of interaction. I did want to highlight one of your other priorities, which is school health. I really want to give kudos to Councilmember Navarro, who worked with our Education and Culture Committee to make sure that we were highlighting school health by ensuring that every single one of our high schools had a school wellness
And we're
center.
so proud of that.
There you
I
go.
have to say.
Can you talk a little bit about what that means and what you envision that meaning for our younger community, namely our high school students?
Yeah, I think it's huge to have access to a healthcare provider right on the spot, no matter what high school you're in this county. Students' healthcare needs have increased over the years. I mean, there was a time when we had our one nurse for 3-4 schools and we were good to go. That's not the case anymore. Our students have more complicated chronic illnesses, mental illness. I used to work as a substitute, a school health nurse here in the county, and my goodness, it was like being in a little urgent care in those health rooms. And so I say that because the acuity of the care of the students' needs is just higher, and in order to meet those needs, you need a skilled professional in there at all times. My vision, I think the commission's vision, is to have a health nurse in every school. I applaud the steps that we've taken to get closer to that, and the things that Mrs. Navarro, with the whole school wellness centers. I mean, these are kinds of things that other people, other counties, other communities look at and, aspire to. So I am very proud of our work in this area, and I know that we will keep pushing until we get everything that we believe our kids need.
I love the way you close that out, because as we rotate off, I think this may be our last time sitting as the Board of Health for some of our members who are leaving the council. And to know that we have actually been instrumental in making some of those kinds of things happen, to ensure that, just as you said, our students are in good hands, is incredibly important. So thank you for all the great work of the Commission on Health. I think that it's been incredibly instrumental. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmembers. We're actually going to bring the band together one more time to interview Dr. Keisha Davis sitting as the Board of Health. So I've got Council Vice President Glass, followed by Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, Dr. DeVance Wilson. It's good to see you again 2 weeks in a row. And when I had asked to speak, I had not anticipated the nature of the conversation brought up by my colleagues, but I appreciate their emphasis on making sure that everybody in our community is healthy and safe, and making sure that we destigmatize STIs. And it's something that I know that they are committed to. As the only LGBTQ member of this council, I am committed to that as well. And so I appreciate the community effort toward making sure everybody has what they need to make themselves healthy and safe, their partners, and the rest of their family. And that does start with destigmatization of this issue. And also what we had talked about last week when we had nearly 24 committees, boards, and commissions come to the HHS committee over 2 days. It was mentioned the need for possibly bringing home testing for some STIs. If we have home testing for COVID, why do we not have home testing for an array of other diseases or ailments that are in existence? And so I think that is something that we should definitely pursue and work with other partners at the state and federal level to try and bring that to fruition. But what I wanted to elevate was the conversations from last week, and the conversations with the Mental Health Advisory Committee and the People with Disabilities and the Commission for Aging and our minority health initiatives. And for people who have not necessarily followed the work of that committee last week, every year we bring together all those organizations, all those volunteer leaders in our community to talk about issues that they are working with, and how we as a community, as a council, and as a county holistically try to solve our health issues. And these are problems and struggles that pre-existed COVID, but we figured out where to put resources to make sure that some of the racial gaps, some of the wealth gaps that existed before really were broken through during COVID. And we have to recommit ourselves to that. And it really does come down to the holistic partnerships and the collaborations. And I'm just curious, from your perspective, in sitting and listening to those 2 days of conversations, was there something that you took away, a few highlights and through lines that you can report back to us, or things that we can work together on?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a tremendous amount of opportunity for collaboration. We have so many like minds in the various commissions. The Commission on Health does liaison with other commissions just so that we can take advantage of opportunities to work together. I wish it was more robust, but we don't have our full complement of commissioners, which just it's a barrier to us being able to work together as much as we would like. But with that said, I think that, given our limitations, we can start thinking of ways to overcome them, because it is a shame when we don't come together and problem solve together and even advocate together. I think that there's strength in numbers, and I think that, it would behoove us to take advantage of this opportunity to do that, to work with other commissions. So I saw a tremendous amount of overlap in mental health, in housing, and transportation. I mean, you name it, the commission has talked about it. I said this last week to you all. One of the areas that I didn't see a lot of overlap in was the environmental health education, which is something new for the commission. And, it's just that we see every single day that we are impacted by environmental health threats, and we really do want to elevate that issue. It does affect everybody across the board, and I think that there is a place for a conversation with other commissions on that topic as well. So that would be the only area that I didn't see a lot of commonality, but would welcome the opportunity to have discussions about that as well.
Well, thank you for bringing up the environmental justice and aspect of healthcare. And you had brought that up last week, and I engaged with you on that. So thank you
Yes.
for re-elevating it today. But I'll close on this. You noted that the commission itself is not working with a full complement of commissioners. And so I'll interpret that as saying we don't have the full team in place, and another star player of that team is our chief health officer.
Yeah.
And so I do look forward to our conversation in a few weeks' time with Dr. Keisha Davis, so that we can, I'm not going to assign a position to where Dr. Davis plays in this team, but I look forward to getting the whole team together so that we can keeping everybody healthy and safe. And thank you for your work.
So do we. Thank you so much, Mr. Glass.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, Dr. DeVance Wilson, it's really good to see you.
Thank you, too.
And I honestly just wanted to say thank you. You have been in the forefront of advocacy and what I call, a real equity warrior in the space of health and so many other areas. For such a long time, you've been leading and you've been setting the example. And as I rotate out of my service here on the county council, one of the things that I know I will always remember was how government was able to defy all the stereotypes of being, too bureaucratic or just too complicated when we responded to the inequitable effects of COVID during this pandemic, when we created the Latino-focused COVID-19 initiative and the African-American Black-focused COVID-19 initiative, because those groups had the highest number of cases and also the highest mortality rate consistently through the pandemic. And I think that really, I hope that will serve as an example moving forward for not just this commission, but then, as you were saying, this idea of collaboration. It's going to be so important because I really, truly feel strongly that we have to take the lessons from the pandemic and not just file it away as something in the past, but something that will serve us moving forward in this space of health, because I do believe that we saw firsthand how it affects everything.
Yes.
And so I honestly just want to, urge you in your position and all of the leaders of the commissions, and of course this next council, to kind of have that in the back of their minds in terms of almost like a case study of how these two initiatives really came together within 10 days. That's how it was just kind of put together, and it was because we have so many incredible assets already in this county that we could deploy quickly. But sometimes we get really stuck in these silos and the bureaucratic red tape and everything. And we'll be here 20 years talking about the same issues. So to me, those two initiatives just, I think, was able to prove that we can do this in Montgomery County in a lot of different spaces if we really want to, if we want to be intentional. And so I just wanted to say that as parting words, and again, just recognize you for your service, because you have been at this for a very long time, and if it wasn't for people like you, again, we would have not been able to really ride through this pandemic in the way that we did, because it took all of that effort coming together and that expertise. So just want to say thank you.
It's very kind of you, Mrs. Navarro. I appreciate you too, and have had the pleasure of working with you many times over the years, and appreciate that. And also, thank you for your hard work. You've done a lot in this county, and we appreciate you. So, but getting to the COVID and how we all responded, I think that many of us knew we could always do that. And I appreciate the agility and flexibility of everybody who just knocked down those silos and said, let's get to this. I knew in my heart of hearts, and as you have alluded to, it's going to be, it is, I hope it is, an enduring model that we use time and time again. So, thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Wonderful questions and comments. Thank you once again so much, Dr. DeVance Wilson, for your leadership. We look forward to our ongoing partnership with the Commission. And that concludes this part of our presentation today. Thank you so much.
Mr. Albanos, thank you so much. And we do look forward to seeing you at the Commission in January. Your support has meant a lot to us.
Absolutely.
So, everybody, have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. All right, colleagues, we now move on to the next item on our agenda, which is a work session in action regarding WSSC's Waters FY24 spending control limits. I believe we have Mr. Fausto Bayonet, Commission Chair, as well as representatives from WSSC as well. I'll turn it over to the Chair of our Transportation and Environment Committee, Councilmember Hucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Welcome to everybody from WSSC. I'll give the chair a minute to join us. Welcome. Okay, so as a reminder, each September, WSSC develops a base case, which is a set of spending control limits based on their long-term financial plan, which takes into account their projected revenues, their projected expenditures, and how well they're tracking their key financial metrics within their policy ranges. The goal for both the Prince George's and the Montgomery Council is to approve our spending control limits by November 1st, so that WSSC can incorporate those approved limits into their operating budget public hearing. The draft is released for public comment by January 15th of each year. So this is not the time of year when we pass the hard cap on their spending. This is the time of year when we make the friendly but strong suggestion that they stay within the limits that we agree on today. So for FY24, WSSC requested a 8.0% rate increase. The T&E committee held a work session on October 24th to discuss their recommendations and look at the data. We recognize, obviously, the inflationary pressures that WSSC is feeling, and we also recognize the widespread economic pressure that many of our ratepayers are feeling as well. So ultimately, the committee unanimously recommended a 7.0% rate increase for FY24, and the Prince George's County Council helpfully has recommended the same. So that's where we are. That's the committee recommendation. I'll turn it over to Mr. Levchenko to take us through his detailed packet, and welcome Chair Bayonet and Deputy General Manager Joe Beach is here, and Letitia Carolina Powell is here as well. So thank you all for joining us. Mr. Beach, do you want to jump in before our staff, or how do you want to handle it?
You just cut it off.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Chair Hucker and council members. Thank you for taking time today to review our budget. General Manager Reed was not able to make it this morning, so she sent her regards, and I'll just let Keith get to his packet.
Well, I think Committee Chair Hucker provided a good summary of the process itself, this annual spending control limits process. And it is a balancing act between trying to recognize WSSC Water's long-range financial plan goals, in particular the financial metrics that are in that, just like as you deal with your own spending affordability processes on the capital and operating side here. There are financial metrics that we rely on to determine whether that long-range financial plan is sound and is going in the right direction. The metrics, which are detailed in the packet, which we can talk about if the council is interested, have policy goals associated with them, which the base case scenario would achieve, as well as the scenarios that the committee discussed and ultimately concurred with. I also wanted to note that the Prince George's Council, they're about a week ahead of us, they acted on these same limits that the committee is recommending last Tuesday. So if the council were to concur with the committee recommendation, we would be consistent with the Prince George's action that's already occurred, and there would be no need for any further reconciliation or having separate limits. And as Mr. Hucker mentioned, the limits don't constrain what the councils can do in mid-May at its bi-county meeting when it takes final action on the budget. But it is important up front in the process, especially since state law does provide a default budget provision if the councils do not agree in the end. The proposed WSSC water budget would stand approved if the two councils do not agree. And therefore, it is important early on to have some parameters that both councils feel are reasonable going forward, so that the budget request that comes to the councils we feel is at least close to where we think the councils will end up. So this is an attempt to start that process off. But we don't have a budget before us today, so we don't know the full implications. We base this on, as I mentioned, the parameters in the long-range financial plan. Obviously, the first year is speculative, and the years beyond that are even more speculative, but that's the nature of the process. And we do our best with our assumptions for revenues and expenditures and with those metrics. With that, I think, without getting into too much detail, I think I would turn it back to Councilmember Hucker or other council members, see if there's any specific questions you may have for me or for the commissioner or staff here from WSSC Water. Staff feels that we arrived in a good place with concurrence with the Prince George's Council and puts us in good stead going forward, setting up the next councils for both Montgomery and Prince George's to start from a good place next spring.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levchenko.
No, and the executive was comfortable with this proposed rate increase as well.
Oh yes, yeah, I did note in the committee addendum to the committee packet and in this packet, the executive had sent over a recommendation. He was supportive of the base case, but recognized that the councils may want to go lower than the base case and suggested trying to stay above a 6.5% increase. The councils came in at 7%. So from the executive's perspective, we're within that the range that the executive had recommended as well.
Right. So thank you for being here, Mr. Harris. Mr. Chairman, anything to add? You don't have to, but
Okay, right. Wise decision, Mr. Vice.
it's the Leggett rule. When you're
That's right.
winning,
That's right.
yeah,
That's
just move on.
All right. I do have a couple colleagues,
Please.
one colleague in the queue. Council Vice President Glass.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Chair Hucker, for starting the conversation. And just want to highlight for everybody that at the committee, there were 3 recommendations, and the one that we settled upon and the one that clearly the Prince George's Council settled upon, I think is the best one moving forward, because we all recognize we need clean water and we need to maintain our sewer systems so that we don't face the same situation that other jurisdictions across the country have faced tragically to their residents' detriment. But we also have to be cognizant that there have been some comments made by credit agencies that just have given me some pause and have given others some pause. And we just have to be mindful of that moving forward. And I think that the rate structure that we have settled upon also directs the board, the commission, when searching for your next general manager, to set them on a course for success, recognizing that rate increases should not always happen and should not be as high as possible, and that expenses need to be taken care of as well, and we need to be mindful of taxpayer and ratepayer structures and fees. And so I think this is a good short-term and long-term solution, and I appreciate the Commission's work, and I know that you'll have a lot more work over the next few months as you look for another general manager to help put us on an even better course. So thank you.
Great. So with that, we have a committee recommendation, and all those in favor of the committee recommendation, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your leadership.
Thank you. Please
we
give our
now-
regards to Ms. Reed and all the commissioners.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is an interview for the Assistant Chief of Police position. And we invite Captain Nicholas Augustine forward.
Good morning.
Good morning, Captain Augustine. Thank you so much for joining us today. I had the opportunity and privilege to work with you on a number of different occasions. You have testified before both the Public Safety Committee and this body numerous times. And I just have to say up front that we are fortunate in the county to have leaders such as you willing to step forward. We have historically a very deep bench here in Montgomery County of extraordinarily talented police officers who make their way up through the ranks and assume leadership positions. There's one sitting to your left right now. And so we really do appreciate that leadership. I'm going to turn it over to the chair of our Public Safety Committee to say a few words, and then we'll turn it over to Chief Jones to say a few words as well before we begin the interview.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I want to echo the words that our president just said. Nick, I haven't known you since you were born, but I feel like I have. You come, and I guess Chief Jones could almost say the same thing. You come from a family that many of us knew, your family and who have been in law enforcement, and we are absolutely very, very fortunate to have you in the positions that you've been in. I've seen you as you've gone literally through the ranks, and we are so fortunate, and I applaud the chief as well as the county executive and that branch for nominating you to this position. I know that you have an interview to go through. I have a feeling you're going to do just fine, and I look forward to voting for you. Thank you very much to you, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chairman Katz. Chief Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning to the council. It's great to see you all again this morning. And it is my honor to be here this morning to present to you who I think is one of the outstanding upcoming leaders of our agency. When it came time for myself to make a recommendation to the county executive for the appointment for this position, it was clear to me after interviewing several great candidates that Nick Augustine really was the cream of the crop at this present time. He has demonstrated over the past few years under my leadership. He's really demonstrated initiative, and even in prior years, he's been willing to have the courage to do things that many other officers have not done throughout their careers, and challenging some of the very tough issues involving many of our folks in the diverse community. And that was one of the reasons why I appointed him as the 4th District Commander prior to his current assignment in this acting role. Just because of his innovation, his courage, and truly his leadership has demonstrated to me that he is ready for this position. And I thank you all for allowing him to be here to interview before you. And I do believe that Montgomery County will be all the better should you all confirm Nick Augustine as the next Assistant Chief for Montgomery County Police. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Captain Augustine, I'm now going to ask you 5 questions, and then my colleagues, when I'm finished, will ask you questions if they'd like to as well, and I already have 2 in the queue.
All right.
So I will begin with the first question is, how has your career prepared you for the position of Assistant Police Chief, and why do you want to serve in this capacity?
Well, first, thank you, Council President Albornoz and members of the council, for the opportunity to be here this morning. Also, thank you to County Executive Elrich for the recommendation of appointment. First, I must mention what I feel is the most important key to success, and that is my support system. Today, supporting me, I have officers from a variety of positions within the department, but also my family. First, my husband, Chaz, who has been by my side for the last 5 years, whether it be the work phone going off in the middle of the night or having to cancel holiday plans due to a critical incident. Second are my parents, who are both here, longtime Montgomery County residents. My mom, Ruth Ann, who retired from Montgomery County government after 25 years, and my dad, Al, who is a retired Montgomery County police officer after more than 26 years of service. I will never forget their sacrifices, from driving me every Wednesday night to, as a teenager, to my Police Explorer meetings, and being here 27 years later. I thank them for their support and their love and understanding during this journey. This month marks my 20th anniversary with Montgomery County Police, but my preparation that has led me to be sitting here today started long before my career with Montgomery County Police. As a graduate of Damascus High School, I've seen our county grow, not only in population, but also in crimes that affect the quality of life in our community. I attended Montgomery College prior to entering the Montgomery County Police Academy. Understanding the importance of education, after several years in patrol, I went back to college and attended University of Maryland University College, where I earned my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I've always felt you can never stop learning, and which pushed me to earn my master's degree from Arizona State University in criminal justice. As a law enforcement leader, you must stay knowledgeable in the current practices, which I had the fortunate ability to attend 2 10-week law enforcement executive programs, to include the Northwestern University School of Police Staff and Command, as well as the FBI National Academy. I am currently completing my 2nd master's degree in public safety from the University of Virginia. While I have earned multiple degrees and attended some of the best training in the nation, the most valuable education comes every day from our officers, professional staff, and community. Whether it is reviewing body-worn camera footage of seeing a new officer use great de-escalation techniques when dealing with a person in a mental health crisis, a professional staff explaining the process of DNA and how it is used to link suspects to crime, or a community group explaining to me their reason for advocating for safer streets. I don't know everything, but I know where I can find the answers to help me make educated and well-rounded decisions. Over the last 7.5 years as a police executive, I've had a wide variety of assignments, to include being a deputy commander, administrative lieutenant for a management services bureau, director of 3 divisions, to include a policy and planning division, personnel division, and major crimes division, before my most recent assignment as a district commander in the 4th District. These assignments have taught me a wide range of skills, to include policy development, working with our labor unions, addressing recruitment and hiring during a pandemic, to developing innovative methods to help a community facing an increase in crime. Through my education and experience, I have seen the challenges in our community from a different lens. I have learned how other law enforcement agencies from around the world implement positive change, and I understand the importance to communicate and collaborate, not only with those we serve, but also those that are serving. My desire to serve as the Assistant Police Chief is to play an important role in advancing Montgomery County Police into the future of policing, as well as bridge a gap of trust between those in the community that are hesitant in partnering with Montgomery County Police. I thrive on taking on challenges and finding innovative solutions that not only meet the objectives, but also incorporate the community into the solutions. If confirmed as Assistant Chief, I will focus our investigative resources on crimes most affecting our community members' safety and quality of life, as well as to ensure our community is confident in the thorough investigations our officers and professional staff conduct to improve the safety of our community.
Well, thank you so much, and welcome to your family. I can see the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Thank you very much for both of your services to our community. And I have a few more questions, but frankly, you've touched on many of the responses in your very well done response to the first question, but I'm still going to ask them, and then I've got at least 3 colleagues in the queue who have their own questions. The second question is, and by the way, Mr. Medellino, thank you for joining us today. I know we're ahead of schedule. After the Captain Augustine answers my questions, I'll give you the opportunity to say a few words before colleagues. Second question is, what do you consider your greatest accomplishments to date, and what do you hope to accomplish if appointed?
I'm a person that believes you should leave a positive impact in every assignment. Upon each assignment I have taken, I have lived by that principle. With such diversity in Montgomery County, often marginalized communities are overlooked. Ever since being a young officer, I had concerns that government resources, to include law enforcement, never reached out to the LGBTQ+ community. Even as social acceptance and equality has progressed over the last 20 years, I felt the need to be a voice as a member of that community. In 2015, I led in the creation of the Montgomery County Police LGBTQ community meetings, which I hosted on a quarterly basis. The goal was to bring members of the community and the police department together to learn from each other and listen to the community's concerns. Today, I continue to be a resource for not only the department, but also the LGBTQ+ community as a commissioner on the Maryland Commission for LGBTQ Affairs. But there was an unexpected positive consequence from this outreach with the LGBTQ+ community, and that was the education it provided me. Learning about the levels of mistrust that goes back generations, the issues of youth homelessness, significant underreporting of domestic violence, and other issues that have affected community members has helped me in a way I lead as an executive. My hope is to learn from other segments of our diverse county and use this knowledge to assist me in making decisions on allocation of resources, community engagement, procedures, training, and future goals of the Investigative Services Bureau.
Thank you so much. The third question is, are there specific challenges you believe the department is facing? And if so, how do you plan to address those challenges?
As of last week, there has been 104 non-contact shootings and 39 contact shootings in Montgomery County so far this year. Our officers have already seized over 1,000 firearms year to date, which is an increase of 22% from year to date last year. I want to ensure significant resources are devoted to investigating these violent crimes and implement innovative community participation programs to assist in investigations. There are many wonderful organizations, from faith-based to intergovernmental programs like our Street Outreach Network, that have partnered with Montgomery County Police to foster relationships with the community. We must continue to embrace and expand these partnerships with the goal of helping members of the community feel safe reporting criminal activity and speaking to investigators when they witness a crime. Law enforcement cannot solve crime alone. Everyone must share information with others to decrease violent crime in the county. I look forward to emerging technology that will assist in our investigations, to include the operation of our Violent Crime Information Center and the recent County Council bill to incentivize the purchase of private security cameras by residents and businesses in its areas experiencing relatively high incidence of crime. Through communication, collaboration, education, and innovation, we can address these challenges and reduce violent crime. I also feel very strong about addressing the mental health needs of our staff. Our investigators see some of the most horrific crimes and deal with the most vulnerable victims. While law enforcement has made strides to address mental health of our staff, there is still a lot of work to be done. Each person deals with trauma and stress differently, and we cannot assume one solution fits all. While a district commander, I contacted a local nonprofit that trains service dogs. The organization brought several dogs in training to our district during shift change. Immediately, you could see the change in demeanor of the officers and the relief of stress. As leaders, we need to be innovative in thinking of indirect mental health support to have a variety of options for our staff. There will be new challenges in the future. Some will be simple and others complex. But if we work together with our labor unions, employees, community members, elected officials among every branch of government, and value everyone's opinion, there is no challenge that we can't overcome.
Thank you so much. And final two questions. First, if appointed, how would you position this role to work on racial equity and social justice issues?
It is important to understand that members of our community have not all had the same experience with law enforcement, whether abroad or in Montgomery County. When I learn from the community, their perception is when people of certain racial backgrounds commit a crime, there is less investigation, or that there is an assumption of guilt or innocence based upon race in our criminal justice system. That needs to be addressed through comprehensive messaging and education to our community through a variety of platforms to include social media, community events, news outlets, MCPS, and with other county departments to help build relationships not only with the community but across county government. Educating the community about our investigative process, providing opportunities to see firsthand the technology used in investigations, and to build confidence that intended and unintended biases do not factor into our investigations. As an assistant chief, one of my first objectives is to ensure that hate crimes among any segment of our population, no matter their severity, are investigated by detectives with knowledge, passion, and resources to hold those accountable who victimize those based upon class. There is much work to be done to educate those in the community about reporting hate crimes, but we must have meaningful engagement among all communities and develop realistic actions to prevent any hate crime or bias-related incident occurring in our community. As a member of the senior executive team, I will collaborate with my peers and other stakeholders into the implementation of recommendations of the ELE4A report to have clear, actionable goals and sustainable efforts that will make Montgomery County Police a national model in addressing racial equity and social justice.
Thank you very much. And the final question for me is, are there any current or potential conflicts of interest of which we should be aware?
No, there is not.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Captain Augustine. Mr. Madaleno, say a few words.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, council members. Thank you first for taking up this nomination. I know this is a critical function, and we wanted to move this nomination now as opposed to waiting for the next council. So again, my thanks and the county executive's appreciation for moving this quickly. I think you can see why the county executive and the chief were so impressed with Commander Augustine in his answers to you. I think he reflects the new leadership that we have in the Montgomery County Police Department. I want to also recognize the other assistant chiefs who are in the audience today to show their support for Commander Augustine. Assistant Chief Frank, Assistant Chief Parker Lone, and Assistant Chief Yamada, who are all here. So with that, you should get to your questions, but I just wanted to make sure you knew how strongly County Executive Elrich supported this nomination and appreciated the great work of the police chief in identifying another outstanding officer to promote to the leadership ranks. And of course, to thank his family. I was joking with Commander Augustine. He's been an MCPD officer since birth. So we are fortunate to have him here now as an assistant chief.
Thank you so much, Mr. Madaleno. And I, Commander Augustine, thank you so much. I said captain earlier. I have several colleagues in the queue. I have Councilmember Rice, followed by Councilmember Givondo, then Councilmember Navarro, then Councilmember Friedson, and then Council Vice President Glass. Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much, Council President. And actually, both are correct, both Captain and Commander.
Okay.
So you were good. You were good either way.
All right, good.
Let me start off by thanking you first for your service. It is one in which there's been so much tumultuousness around our police officers that are sworn in to protect and serve that people oftentimes don't remember that every day you put on the uniform and you step outside, there is no guarantee that you're going to come home. And so to your family as well, thank you for continuing to sacrifice for the greater good of our community. Which is what I want to talk to you about, because in investigative services, it is incredibly important, especially in our communities of color and of lower socioeconomic status, who oftentimes feel as though those investigations aren't held to the same level. And you touched upon this in your opening remarks. But tell me a little bit about how you look to redirect resources and to ensure that you're training your investigative forces to ensure that those folks who are being victimized in communities, who oftentimes are immigrants, who oftentimes may be speaking a different language other than English as their primary language, but who also deserve the same protection and service that every single one of us does here in this community will get.
Thank you, Councilmember. We have a very competitive process to be a part of the Investigative Services Bureau. Officers have to compete among other officers to be a detective and have the opportunity to investigate the crimes that are committed against our community members. And we look to have diversity into our detectives that are there that reflect portion of our community. Having Spanish-speaking officers, having officers that have worked different areas in the community that have made contact with community members in the past. But I also feel and have already implemented is having our investigative services engage with the community and be involved in community engagement. There is no reason why detectives cannot go out and be a part of community events and teach about the prevention of auto theft, to teach about the recognizing signs of sex abuse and domestic violence. It's not just a duty of our patrol services, but it's a duty of all of our employees. I spoke to our director of our crime lab and said, I want to have community engagement up here so we can have the future scientists of our young adults come up here and get excited about looking at DNA and seeing different aspects that they can follow that career path. But looking at that and serving our community and having a diverse understanding what is going on in the community and making sure our detectives realize that every case that they are assigned is important. They may not think it is an important case, but it is important to someone out there that has been victimized and contacted us for help.
Let me just say that that was the perfect answer. I can't tell you, and coming from being born and raised here in Montgomery County, it is so great to hear exactly that, touching on all of the points that are incredibly important, making sure that people know that they're valued, making sure that those who may not, for whatever, like you had said before, those biases that are inherent that may not be intentional, right? That say, oh, this isn't a big deal, but it does matter to those individuals. Before coming on the council, I served on the Victim Services Advisory Board because of some things that had happened in my family and loss and some tragic events. And so every single thing that happens to our community does matter and does deserve to be investigated. So thank you for that answer. I will just say that thank you for the shout out for the security cameras. That was my bill, so appreciate that. I didn't pay him to do that, by the way. It's just, but I did just want to touch on one last thing, and that is human trafficking. Both Councilmember Hucker and I serve on the Human Trafficking Task Force. We've been very concerned over the past 3 years of COVID that always during crises where we see around the world, it heightens the ability for folks to fall victim and prey to those who want to enslave folks in different forms of human trafficking, whether it's traditional for sex slavery and for sex workers, or for some of the indentured servant type human trafficking as well. What is it that you're going to do working with our federal partners to ensure that here in Montgomery County, we can stave off some of that rise that we're seeing when it comes to human trafficking?
And that's a very important issue that's affecting our community. And our Special Investigative Division, our Vice Intelligence Unit, is assigned to handle those type of incidents. And we have several officers that are on task force that's been able to provide us intel and information to strategically investigate these crimes, as well as provide victims resources in dealing with the aftermaths of being victimized. But again, a big part of this is educating the community and letting our immigrant community know that this is not okay. That if you see something, we go back to it and say something. It could be your neighbor, you could be seeing something suspicious going on in your apartment complex or so on, but we need you to talk to us. And that is the constant messaging, whether it's in person, through social media, or through alternative language media sources, getting the message out there that we don't accept that here, and we want to help those that are being victimized and being trafficked through the community. And luckily, we have a great group of detectives that investigate this, that receive a significant amount of training and work constantly with our federal partners to be able to recognize the signs and take issues by resolving and getting services to the victims.
Well, thank you very much, Captain Augustine. I just want to say to Chief Jones, sir, once again, you've knocked it out of the park. The only bad thing about having such great assistant chiefs is that you know what happens, then everybody else wants to poach them. So try and hold on to this one tight. Captain Augustine, please stick around for a while. What you're going to deliver to Montgomery County is incredibly needed. We'd love to have new innovative voices as a part of the community that continue to uplift this department to be one of the best in the nation. I truly believe that, and so that starts with great leadership, and that leadership is identifying new leaders who can come about to continue that great work. So thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you. Good morning. Good to see you. Congratulations again to your family as well. Always have enjoyed our interactions and your thoughtfulness. Had a visit with you and your role at D4, and a very open and engaging discussion, as you remember. You mentioned in your answer to the question about racial equity that you thought, and I'm just paraphrasing, it was important to educate the community that the intended or unintended biases don't factor into investigations, right? I guess just backing up the premise of that question, do you think that there are unintended and intended biases that do factor into investigations sometimes? And if so, what's your role in this position in addressing that?
Yeah, so yes, I do believe there is. And it goes into oversight. And a lot of it is the unintended biases. There's even technology out there that have unintended biases. If you look at the future of certain programs out there that are using IA and stuff like that, they have unintended biases built into AI. Sorry about that. AI built into
IA is probably something too.
built into the software, and you look at facial recognition programs and stuff like that that have that unintended biases. But it's training our investigators to recognize that even software and programs and things like that can have the unintended biases, and looking how we can recognize that and make sure we can make improvements. Same with intended biases. We need to have that oversight to make sure there is no intended biases from any of our investigators, professional staff, that affect the community and affect our very important investigations. And that's also why I strive the importance of ensuring hate crimes are a priority in our department and being investigated, and making sure passionate detectives that have the resources are investigating these very serious incidents that occur in our community.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, today's actually Maryland Emancipation Day, 158 years ago. November 1st, we made the decision to end chattel slavery in the state. Obviously a long road since then. But one of the things we've talked about is that all of us have biases, right? And they're all baked into the pie that is America. And I think I appreciated you mentioning the EL4A recommendations, for example, that we really need to get moving on. I know some have started, but we need to accelerate, because we have to continually evaluate and reevaluate who we're bringing in, what the outside experiences have been, and how do we make sure that we're having fair, just, equitable interactions with all government, including police. You'd agree with that?
Yes.
And so I look forward to working with you on that, and with the chief and the administration. It's imperative now more than ever. So thank you, and congratulations in advance.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I've got Councilmember Navarro, followed by Councilmember Freeston, and then Council Vice President Glass. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, Captain Augustine, obviously, I am not so happy because you have done such an incredible job, helping out and leading in the district that I represent. And I have always really appreciated your constant communication and your openness. And if anything, I feel like this is a district that is so representative of the entire county. So in many ways, it's like a microcosm. And I think that you've done a really good job, and hopefully it has helped you also understand some of the nuances that are contained throughout the county. And I will say, obviously, representing this county in general, it's a complex task, because we have urban areas, we have suburban areas, we have rural areas, and there are issues that are very unique to all of those areas. And so it is something that I know for our police department, it plays into the quality of work and how complex it is for you to respond. And so there are many things that I could ask, but you did mention partnership with the Street Outreach Network, and you did talk about that in terms of like the need to strengthen that. Can you just talk a little bit about what that partnership has been like, how that has been helpful in your work, and just in general for our police department to address many of those complex issues in the community?
Right, it's great to have partners from any avenue in the community, and the Street Outreach Network has provided that when we're looking to reach out to youth that are vulnerable to gang activity or being brought into gangs. So it's great to have those individuals show the positive life that you can have, and that you don't need negative activity in your life to have a successful life. And having that mentorship and bringing them along to show them how to be successful is a very important part, because a lot of youth in our community don't have that positive influence in their life when they go home every day. Mm-hmm. And they turn to others in the community that may not influence them correctly. And having the Street Outreach Network to be there to talk to the community, to educate our youth. During COVID, it was a little more difficult to, have them out in the community. It was difficult to do a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But now, as we come post-COVID, bringing them back into the picture and working together and having their staff be available as they were having staffing needs, it will be a great opportunity to continue that partnership and hopefully play a severe role in reducing our violent crime that is occurring in our community and is affecting our youth.
Thank you. And so, this has been like one of my priorities since I joined the council, was to strengthen this particular work, because I know how critical it is to have that partnership. Mr. Madalino, I don't know if you guys have already started, well, I'm sure you have started the budget. Will this be a program that will be strengthened in the next budget cycle? And also youth employment programs? Is that something that you're looking at just holistically as it relates to also the work that our police department is doing, and it connects to so many things?
In fact, we've been having a lot of conversations about a youth initiative that would deal with many of these issues. The council president has been very clear in his desires to make progress on this front, and also as chair of HHS, he has been pushing on this. So I think we are, as well as Councilmember Rice, so I think you will see, or the community will see, a proposal, knock on wood, come March on that front.
That would include resources to strengthen Street Outreach Network and youth employment?
I believe so. I believe so, and I think as a private citizen, you'll be happy.
I will be very happy.
You'll be here to come and lobby.
As a private citizen, there are a lot of people that are still going to contact me, and I'll make sure to send them over here to do some testimony. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, Captain Commander Augustine / Commander Augustine, thank you again so much for all you've done in District 4, and I know that you will do really amazing work along with our chief moving forward as well.
Thank you, and thank you, Councilor Novato, for your leadership in the youth development space. You have my cell phone number, and I know you will not delete it. So, all right, Councilmember Friedson, followed by Council Vice President Glass.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I will just note that the honorable stays after your term of service, and we know you will put it to good use with your leadership in the community that we know will continue. First comment, Augustine comes from August. August means distinguished and respected and impressive. And I will just say, with your parents here, You have honored your family and your name just by the work that you have been doing, and have been all of the things that your name means. So I just wanted to acknowledge and thank you for that. I'm reflecting back on the 100-year centennial of the police department and the videos and the descriptions that we've seen about how this small rural department of a few officers has become one of the most sophisticated public safety organizations in the country. And you're reflective of that level of sophistication. And I'm reminded of the conversation that we had here where I asked the police chief about the challenge of recruiting and whether or not it was appropriate for a place like Montgomery County, a respected police department like ours, to lower our standards to allow for police officers who have less education than we have traditionally required, like many other police departments. And I was happy with the answer, which was no, for the reasons that we want to have the best in this community, because that's what our community needs and deserves, and that's what we want. And you are proof positive for why that policy is so necessary, so we can get talented people like you who have more degrees than most of us up here, which we really appreciate. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and appreciate that, and I thank you and I thank the department for holding those standards so high, because I think it's important and I think you're reflective of that. So thank you for that. The reality is we're in a moment right now. And we're in a moment for a lot of reasons. We're in a moment where we're having a very difficult conversation about accountability in policing. We're in a moment where we're having a racial reckoning, and all of the issues that you talked about and all of the challenges that colleagues have mentioned. We're in a moment where morale is down and recruitment is a challenge. And being able to have a police department that can fight crime and can work together collaboratively with communities to keep us safe is a challenge. And I'm curious, how do you see us balancing that? How do you see us balancing the need to, on the one hand, increase morale and make it attractive and encouraging to get the type of police officers and other personnel in the department that we desperately need, while building and strengthening and improving upon the relationships within the community and within individual communities that we need in order to do the work that you and your colleagues do every day?
Thank you for that question. And my perspective on it is, and I've always felt this way in all my assignments as a supervisor, is you treat your employees not as a number. They are a person, they're a person of your workforce. They're not just position number such and such. They are a person that is of value to this organization and of value to this community, and you have to show that to them as a supervisor and as a leader, to not only be respected, but to show that you do appreciate what they do. Because if they don't have that sense that they are making an accomplishment or working towards the mission of the department, they no longer see value in being a part of the team. And while we remain busy in our daily lives as leaders and officers, we need to take that moment just to recognize the great work that not only officers, but our professional staff and volunteers contribute to this organization. I have always felt that being a key role in ensuring we are more efficient. And we also have to provide the tools to the officers and the investigators to make their job efficient, to make their job easier and less cumbersome, to listen to their voice and opinions on how they think an operation should go, or their suggestions on it, because, again, I don't have all the answers. And I rely on my investigators to be the subject matter experts, to know how to do the job and tell me what they need, and I'll take that into consideration to make the ultimate decision. So I feel that's a very important role, and I look as we move forward in engaging more with the community and getting out into the community, as well as using technology to make everything more efficient and getting the value we're in for from our employees.
Appreciate your perspective, and really appreciate the chief and the CAO and the county executive putting you forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we will hear from Council Vice President Glass.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commander Augustine, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Congratulations to you and your family as well. And I want to just thank you for your candor and for being out and proud and for being your authentic self as you have served the residents of Montgomery County for all these years.
Thank you.
It is noted and it is appreciated because we know that representation matters. And as I look at you and look at your colleagues, I just want to thank Chief Jones for assembling a team that represents the true diversity of Montgomery County. We know that representation matters. Our residents need it, we demand it, and I appreciate it. So thank you. And Commander Augustine, I don't have any questions, but I just want to share with you that I share your commitments and your priorities, specifically as it's been brought up this morning, your commitment to positive youth development, to role models, to youth homelessness, recognizing that 40% of individuals who are homeless, youth who are homeless, identify as LGBTQ. And so the nexus here has to be noted. And then also looking at the annual report for bias incidents here in Montgomery County from last year. In 2021, there were 56% of the hate crimes here in Montgomery County were based on race. 24% of hate crimes here in Montgomery County was religious bias. And 16% of the hate crimes here in Montgomery County were based on an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity. And so there are a lot of conversations that we are having today at this council, but as it relates to you and your commitment to making sure that everybody here feels safe, I share that, we all share that, everybody in this room shares that. And I look forward to working with you toward that goal to make sure that we stem the rise of anti-Semitism, that we stem the rise of Islamophobia, that we stem the rise of homophobia. And there's a lot more in this diverse community of 1.1 million people to make sure that everybody feels safe being who they are, regardless of where they pray, regardless of their national origin, regardless of their gender identity, who they love, or the language they speak. And I appreciate you sharing that commitment, and I look forward to working with you and the entire team to make everybody feel safe here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Captain Augustine. Oh, Mr. Manolino.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Because I know the term is almost over, hopefully I'll call him Assistant Chief Augustine referenced in his testimony the changes that have occurred in this community over the last 20 years. And I don't want to miss an opportunity to thank Councilmember Navarro, Councilmember Rice, Councilmember Hucker, Councilmember Reamer, as your service on the council concludes, for the contributions you have made in this office and other offices to make this such a welcoming community, whether it's for the LGBTQ plus population or for any other community. You've helped the county continue to grow, evolve, welcome, and on behalf of me, my family, the county executive, other people in the administration, thank you so much for what you all did to make this a reality so that we can have a moment like this with Commander Augustine in front of you, and it's almost a yawn that we are moving forward with this sort of diversity. So thank you to all the council members, but especially the four of you for your distinguished service.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We will be voting on this soon. We now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is interviews for the Board of Appeals. I'd like to welcome Christopher Hitchens, Isa Kozame, George Martin, and Laura Seminario Thornton. And I believe Ms. Thornton is going to be testifying or answering questions virtually.
We also have Stephen Allen.
Oh, and Stephen Allen.
So,
Where's
I apologize for that.
No problem. No problem.
Here you go.
Thank you.
And Mr. Stephen Allen is here as well. Also want to recognize in the audience is Senator Cheryl Kagan and Senator Ben Kramer. Thank you both for being here today. So I have a series of questions that I will ask of all of the panelists. And I ask humbly that our panelists keep their responses to a minute or two per response We have a lot to get to this morning, and this is, of course, important to us, but we want to make sure we move along. So I will first ask a question of Mr. Hitchens, and then Ms. Kozame, and then Mr. Martin, and then Ms. Thornton, and then Mr. Allen. So we will start with Mr. Hitchens. Why do you want to become a member of the Board of Appeals? Mr. Hitchens.
Good morning. I want to become a member of
If you could hit your microphone button, there you go.
Do I have to hold it?
Nope, don't have to hold it.
No,
Yep.
it's on. All right. Good morning to you. And I have two reasons why I want to be a member of the board. One's a personal reason. One is just recognizing the importance of the role of the board at this particular time. So I enjoy administrative law, the process of it, and I enjoy doing all the things that the board members.
Mr. Hitchens, if you could pull your microphone a little closer to you, or you pull yourself closer to the microphone. There you go. Perfect.
So I enjoy doing all the things that board members do. I enjoy looking at a statute or a regulation or an application and understanding that. I enjoy being in a hearing, running the hearing if I need to, collecting the testimony and the data so that we can arrive at information to deliberate on it and then write an opinion that'll have conclusions of law and a statement of facts in it. The other reason I want to be on the board is that I realized this over the summer that there has been such a time in the last couple of years of what I would just call it dysfunction or perception of dysfunction in general about the society. But when you are in the Board of Appeals, you do not feel that there's any dysfunction in the government. It feels like a safe place to be. And I know that you all, have the motivation and over the last couple of years to have done all of these proactive and generative things to keep us healthy and keep us moving forward in the county. And that's what I view the board's role as now, is to be able to be that positive force. And those are the two reasons I want to be on the board.
Thank you so much. Ms. Kozame, same question. Why do you want to become a member of the Board of Appeals?
Well, first of all, good morning.
Mr. Kozame, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And if you could, got it.
I consider the Board of Appeals as a sort of Supreme Court for zoning administration, certain administrative decisions and so forth. For more than 56 years, I've been an engineer, manager, administrator involved with various projects, site selection, design, construction, etc., etc., etc. So I feel confident I have acquired solid background to hear and present, to hear the presented facts, and from there make a decision as such. To me, each case is unique, but there are similarities that we need to keep into account. As you may have seen in my vitae, I have an opportunity to be one of the founding members of the National Society of Engineering Ethics. This organization is now part of the National Society of Professional Engineers. I've taught among many management courses in the engineering ethics course, and I'm very proud to say I'm the only engineer among the 6 architects interviewing that we serve on the State Board of Architecture Review Board. I also serve a similar position on Board of Airport Zoning Appeals. That board mission is very similar to the appeal board here. As such, I think I have I'm offering my expertise and background to serve the county and the people of the county as well as the state.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kozame. Same question for Mr. Martin.
Morning. The answer is I'm looking forward to the opportunity to serve Montgomery County. It's the county I was born in. I've called it home for 57 years. I'm also interested in fulfilling the term of Bruce Goldenson, whose legacy in Montgomery County is substantial, and it would be an honor to serve in his place. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Thornton, who is testifying virtually, or speaking virtually, excuse me.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for this great opportunity. My goal is to serve the county through the board. This is the second time that I am serving in a committed. It could be the second time. I did in early childhood education, and then I am serving my community also in early childhood education. I graduated in political science, so I would like to apply my knowledge to the board. I feel like the board is very similar to the proceedings of the court. That is my goal, to serve the county. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Allen.
Thank you. My interest is one of service. I've been in the county probably for over 40 years. And been a practicing trial attorney for almost all of that time in the county. And the interest I have is, making sure there's smart decisions are made in regards to the uses of property. I have a business property up in actual Gaithersburg City, which I, many decades ago, actually sought my own zoning change and was successful in doing that in order to put my law firm there. But I've had a wide variety of different charitable and service-oriented efforts in my life, whether it's from my church or spending close to 20 years working on homeowners associations, which is not something that most people seek because of the difficulties. And as being a lawyer, I think I even though I don't have a zoning practice per se, I think I bring some fresh eyes, some fresh thoughts to the process. Obviously, I understand the importance of law and application of law. And so as a lawyer, I think I bring something to the table, fresh eyes. I think I bring something to the table, and I have a desire to serve the county in which I've lived for many decades. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Kozame, you will be the first to answer this next question. The next question is, what in your background prepares you to serve on the board? And you need to hit the button by your microphone. There you go. Mr. Kozame, the question is, what in your background prepares you to serve on the board?
Well, as you may have seen on my resume, after receiving my Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering degree from George Washington University, I was employed by Potomac Electric Power Company, and after that, I served 16 years. I was in that position, I was intimately involved with the site selection for substation, transmission line, distribution lines, etc. And after that, after the site selection, I was intimately involved with the design, because most of the substations, some of you may remember, are in neighborhoods, so it affected everybody around them. And after working for Pepco for 16 years, I worked for 10 years for an engineering consulting firm, David Volker & Associates in Bethesda, which again I was the chief electrical engineer. 8 years later, I was hired by the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority as manager of utilities division, and that was during the expansion of Washington Dulles National Airport, and was intimately again involved with the site selections of various facilities, effect of the neighborhood, etc. And since I retired 10 years ago after 22 years of service, I still serve as the president of my engineering consulting firm.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kozame. Mr. Martin, what in your background prepares you to serve on the board?
Well, specifically, I'm a registered architect. I have a Bachelor of Science in Architecture and a Master's in Architecture from Catholic University. I spent the following 20 years after my graduate degree, teaching in that program as a faculty member and running as Dean of Undergraduate Studies the curriculum of that institution. I've also taught at Mississippi State University and overseas in Tunisia. I've recently had the opportunity in the later part of my career to offer service on a local level in my hometown of Garrett Park. I was actually born in Garrett Park, and I bought a house there in my late 20s and raised my children in Garrett Park. And I had the opportunity to become involved in the land use committee for the town. And that experience has been enlightening in a number of ways, and it's heightened my interest in being of further service, in that much of what we do is application and alignment of county zoning regulations at the smaller scale in the town. And so over the course of my 7 years as chair of the land use committee in Garrett Park, I've been able to learn more about Montgomery County zoning and really have interest in the goals of the county ordinance, and would like to participate more. And I think as an architect in particular, I bring that voice to the board, which would be very valuable.
Thank you. Ms. Laura Seminario Thornton, you're up next. I believe you are on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I did real estate here in between 2005 2012, and then I am doing early childhood education, and right now moving through the process to understand the zoning and all the service that Montgomery County have for land use and the properties. I really would like to be in the board as a political science analyst to see what will be the next steps and be able to discuss these steps with other persons that are interested to serve the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Allen?
I think at its essence, it's applying facts to the law. And I think as a lawyer, and being a lawyer for 36 years in the county, I mean, that's what I do on a daily basis in my practice. And I think I can do that successfully in regards to the zoning ordinances and the special exceptions or conditional uses or variances that probably come primarily to the board. As I said earlier, I think I bring sort of a fresh view. Since I don't come necessarily from a zoning background, I'm not an architect, I'm not an engineer, so I don't come with any preconceived notions of what's right or wrong or what I favor or what I don't favor. I'm going to be called upon to look at the facts and apply the law, and I assume the law needs to be abided by, and if there's exceptions to be made and conditions are met, then perhaps special exceptions or conditional uses can be granted, or variances can be granted if the level of proof is provided sufficiently. And of course, you know, to guard against any one particular person, of course you have a board who has to vote on these things, so it's kind of a sort of a joint view of looking at it and what is the consensus. I've worked in groups before that we work with consensus, either the homeless associations that I've been involved in or some of the church groups I've been involved in all worked on consensus. I've taken leadership roles in those things and participatory roles in those things. And I think I work well in those kind of environments, and I think I could be a real asset to the county in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hitchens.
The best experiences that I've had, I think, were actually arguing in front of the Board of Appeals. And I was an assistant county attorney from 1990 to 1999. So during that time, I defended a lot of administrative agency opinions and permits that were granted, like building permits, historic area work permits, other decisions that were made in the county, and then also defended them in the Circuit Court of Appeals if they went up there, and occasionally in the Court of Special Appeals. I think I had one Commission on Common Ownership Communities case that went all the way to the Court of Special Appeals. So then, when I left the county, one other experience there, still with the county, was that I was the counsel to the Commission on Common Ownership Communities, and I helped develop, in the early days of the commission, the format for their decisions and hearings and how that went. And I used the Board of Appeals format as the basis for that. So then, when I left the county, I also appeared in front of the Board of Appeals for the private sector, for property owners who needed a variance, and then defended a board decision not to grant a change to a special exception for a condominium that I represented, and that went up to the Court of Special Appeals, and the board's decision there was upheld. I've listed off some other administrative forms that I've appeared in front of in a letter that I wrote to the board. So I have extensive actual experience appearing before administrative bodies. And I guess last thing I'd say about that is I really do enjoy working with the statute or working with regs. When I was an assistant county attorney, I reviewed and wrote regulations. I reviewed and contributed to legislation. I contributed a lot to the MPDU law and regulations the last time. Well, I don't know if it's the last time or not, but one time when it was revised. That would have been probably the mid to late 90s. And then I taught legislative drafting at Catholic University, and taught principles of statutory construction and writing and that type of thing. One time, for a writing project in that class, one of my students developed a draft statute to restrict the use of gas-powered leaf blowers here in Montgomery County. That's some of my experience.
Thank you. Mr. Martin, we will next start with you for this next question. Tell us about a time where you have helped to achieve consensus among groups or individuals with differing points of view.
Thank you. I've served on just under 30 committees and boards, both for institutions and national, over my 30-plus year career. Probably the most difficult job for consensus, if anybody has experience in the academic world, is a faculty meeting, curriculum committee meeting. I served as chair of curriculum, as dean of undergraduate studies at Catholic U, and it's like herding cats, and it can be very difficult. But what I found is the most potent tool that you have in leading a group to gain consensus is being a good listener. And that is something that I think architects are uniquely trained to do, in that in initial engagement with a client on a project, you need to understand what the problem is, not what the solution is. You have to hear the issues and understand what the problem is. And to get that, you have to understand, first and foremost, who the stakeholders are. So clear identification of stakeholders, the ability to listen to the stakeholders, and then the effort, often time-consuming but important, to garner consensus among the different stakeholders to realize unanimity in whatever decision that you're coming to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lauria Seminario Thornton. I think you may stay on. There we go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry about that. I truly believe in the dialogue. I think it is very, very important to work through a goal to participate and talk with all the parts. That's, I think, is the main thing for the board, to get a consensus idea of what is needed, of what is required. Communication is the base of everything for humans to be understand something, and I think that is what, as a woman, I can bring to the board too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Stephen Allen.
In my role as a trial lawyer, it has always been, in my role as trial lawyer, it's always been my desire to bring parties together to come to some kind of consensus. I feel that that's the true victory. You can always litigate a case, you can always fight a case. But if you can find common ground from both sides and come to an acceptable compromise to resolve an issue, it's always, been, in my view, a preferred way of doing things. I think that has helped me in my role in the Fee Dispute Committee, the Bar Association of Montgomery County, where I was successful for many years in resolving people's fee disputes with lawyers, that they encouraged me to become co-chair of that committee, which I've had the pleasure of serving in for the last several years. I've been on homeowners associations for probably 20 plus years, a very undesirable position for most because of sometimes of the acrimony on those boards. I was on one Montgomery Village board for 13 years, where we, I think, got a lot done to improve our local homes corporation. And I even served on the committee, fulfilling roles even when I wasn't actually living in the community, but I still owned a property in that community, because we had such a good working group for so many years and getting things done and showing a great deal of respect for one another, that they encouraged me to stay on the board since I still owned a property, even though I didn't technically live in that community anymore. I've done the same I was for a long time in the church I used to attend on a deacon's board for over 10 years, where primarily we were in a helps kind of situation where the county would send us people who had maxed out on some of their benefits, and could we help them? And of course there was some lively discussions about how we can help people, how we can help the people budget, how we can get people to be more productive. And so we always had to come to a consensus in those groups. So I've also been on a homeowners association in my local community and been president for several different terms. So the desire for consensus has always been a really important thing for me. I've always felt that if I had to go to trial in a case, it was almost like a failure, because I couldn't somehow bring both sides together to see that there's common ground and to save them the cost of litigation. And though sometimes, of course, that's necessary to litigate matters. And so I think I've been very successful in my life, and am encouraged in all situations to seek harmony and to seek a consensus, and to accept one thing I think is important is that I accept the consensus decision, even if it's not my own. As long as people have an opportunity to express their views, and there's professional and respectful debate, you can live with that result. Because it's been thought out, and even if it's not the way you would have resolved it, you can live with it because you've been heard. And I think that's the essence of consensus building, and that's what I desire to do, and have done that in my practice, and feel that's success. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hitchens?
After I left the county attorney's office, I was also a panel chair for the Commission on Common Ownership Communities. And those panels are 3-person panels. They consist of 2 members of the commission, and the commission has members from the management community, from the owners community, and from the board members community. And then you have a panel chair who's familiar usually with homeowners association law. So then after you have the hearing, and it runs according to the county's Administrative Procedures Act and its own some additional regs that it has. But of course then, just like the Board of Appeals, after it's over, you have to, the panel members have to come to a consensus or not, you can have a 2-to-1 vote, but they have to come to a consensus. And so I had to manage that a lot of times. And so what I found was a very helpful technique was if we could stay away from labels of certain behavior about what somebody did or didn't do, and just have people say what their concern was. If there was a concern that they had about the testimony, or what the precedent of this case was going to be, or how the board worked. And I found that if I could get people to explain themselves a little bit more rather than just have a label and have people reacting to it, that was very helpful in getting to a consensus.
Thank you. Mr. Kozame?
During my 50-some years of professional life, there have been numerous occasions that we had to come to consensus and agree with the one project that really I like to bring up is during the construction of expansion of Washington Dulles Airport. We had to relocate, since the building was expanding, we had to relocate the chilled and hot water lines, which serves all the buildings throughout the campus. And obviously there were a lot of offices and airlines and so forth were involved they were affected. To make the story short, after 3 days of listening to interested parties' comments and so forth, we were able to come up with a good route that was had least impact on everybody's life. So with that, it was a 6-foot pipe that had to be relocated through the whole facility. That's not a small pipe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kozame. The next question is fairly straightforward. I'm going to start with Ms. Seminario Thornton. The question is, will you be able to make the time commitment required for service on the board?
Yes, I will. I really involved in my community. Right now I am serving my community through early childhood education. I have some projects to serve the community. And I always try to be on time and able to attend all the reunions or meetings that we can have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Allen?
Actually, the board meets at the most perfect time in the week for my general schedule. I have a general practice firm. And at 61, I have been winding it down a bit. To a large extent, another issue is finding good, competent staff has been a real difficulty in this economic environment. But Wednesday is the perfect day for my schedule, which is the freest day of the week for me. And without doubt, I can meet the needs. I'm also of the opinion that when you take on a commitment, you meet that commitment. That's your word. And I would not have been seeking this position unless I wholeheartedly will do everything in my power to make sure that there's no conflict with my duties. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hitchens?
Yes, I'll be able to make the time commitment that's necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Kozame?
Yes, I have no problem. As I have mentioned, I'm a retiree, so I have plenty of time on my hand. In addition, as I mentioned, I also serve on 2 of the state board, which they meet as needed basis, and their meetings are scheduled way in advance, so I don't think I have any problem.
Wonderful. Mr. Martin?
Yes, I'm able to make the time commitment.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, we have 2 more questions. This next one will start with you. If appointed, how would you position this role to work on racial equity and social justice issues?
I haven't had that much time to think about this question, mainly because I was just given the questions a few minutes ago, because I wasn't sure if I was going to make this interview, because I had a pre-existing court case that initially wasn't going to conflict with the initial 2 o'clock interview time. And then the interview time was changed. And so at the last minute I was able to attend. So I've only got these questions. I try to live my life treating everyone as a human being, no matter if they agree with me or disagree with me on really important subjects or debates that are going on in society. And I think that's the way you want to approach any situation. You're going to deal with people as individuals, as people, as human beings. that all have equal rights and opportunity to be heard and to be respected. And that's the way I've always tried to live my life. I think in many ways, my faith encourages me to see everyone in that equal light. That's the way I would approach any of those issues. In the last couple of years, since I had additional space in my office, I've started mentoring lawyers, and I had the pleasure of mentoring. I mean, I'm a Christian, but I had the pleasure of mentoring a young Muslim lawyer, and she and I have become good friends over the years after the period of time that she was in my office, where I gave her a free office and tried to encourage her to start her practice. After her, I was actually able to mentor a lawyer who was gay. And that surprised, I think, some people who heard about it. But he was a human being. We became friends. He actually moved back to Texas, so he's not in the area any longer. But I was really happy to meet him and encourage him, and as well as the other lawyer. And even though, we may have differences in regards to the way we see the world or we see faith issues, we're all human beings, and that's how we need to be treated. And that's the way I want to treat everyone. Everyone has a fair opportunity. So I apologize if it's not as complete an answer on these issues, since I didn't have as much time to think about it. But I try to treat everyone fairly, in an ethical way, honest way, because that's what they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hitchens?
Yeah, I'm not sure that the board has the ability to implement a lot of policies that relate to its jurisdiction, and to fulfill the equity requirements that the county has embarked on, because they're mostly, their role is to hear these disputes and then interpret the statutes and the regs that the council has put in place. But I can see, I think I can see an area that's coming that's going to need the board's attention a lot, and it's already started, and it has to do with accessory dwelling units. And this relates directly to, the county's history of developing affordable housing or not developing affordable housing, and certain neighborhoods being inaccessible to many people to live in them because the housing is not affordable and accessory dwelling units were not permitted. So the board's already had some cases that involved, interestingly, they start as, they're building permit applications because it's permitting services that would need to approve this. And then the testimony in these is just fascinating to hear about how, various families where immigrants were able to buy this land, the grandparents lived nearby and would like to live in a building, and then a wrench gets thrown in and it's a non-conforming garage that has to first have a variance granted for it. So there are a lot of issues there. But just this past legislative session, there were two bills, a House bill and a Senate bill, introduced and to allow jurisdictions to make changes to the accessory dwelling unit standards. And I think that's one that's coming, and I think that the council will either deal with it and then, have the, and I think it'll be a relaxing of standards, so less setbacks, heights different, that type of thing. And I think that's going to be an issue that the board will come before the board, and an important one, and an important one for the board to be able to handle, to sort of catch us up and make some amends for the lack of accessibility in certain neighborhoods.
Thank you. Mr. Kozame?
Thanks very much. As you may see, I was not born in this country. I was born in Iran 80-some years ago. During that time, all of us were all equal. That's how I was brought up. As such, I had a good example is I have 4 good friends that after 60-some years we are still friends. One was I as a Muslim, A friend was a Christian, an Armenian, and another Jew friend. And we are always, we are still considering each other's brother. And as such, that's how I was brought up, that everybody is equal, so everybody should have the same opportunity. As such, I don't think I have any problem with treating anybody differently.
Thank you very much. Mr. Martin?
Thank you. The question was how do you position the role as a board member? And I think that the position is very much, first and foremost, about impartiality. Any party that comes before the board should understand that they are getting an impartial hearing of their case or their cause. So that's primary. The other aspect of that that one might want to get into would be that of advocacy. And certainly my professional organization, the American Institute of Architects, has written on this subject of environmental equity and social justice. It's fascinating, but I don't believe it's a role of a member of the board to advocate. In fact, I have a very low social media profile for that reason. Even in my small local role in Garrett Park, I don't like to advocate, because anybody coming before our group with a cause needs to understand that they're getting a clear and unbiased opinion. So that's very important. On the general issue of racial equity, I think it's an important one. Mr. Hitchens spoke to this. The county is changing, and there are zoning changes that are occurring to address these economic and racial disparities. And I think it's important for a board member to express, which I do here now, alignment with the goals of allowing the seeing the zoning ordinance in Montgomery County respond to a lot of the social changes that the county is experiencing. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Ms. Seminario Thornton?
Thank you. I have acceptance and respect for everyone, no distinctions, and I embrace all the cultures, all religions. I think it is the most important thing, the communication and the respect that we can have it for everyone. To get a work done with many different backgrounds, the dialogue, the communication is the base for everything. And overall, the respect that we can have it to new ideas, generational ideas, cultural ideas that can be aligned with our work. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the final question is, and we will start with Mr. Hitchens for this question. Are there any potential conflicts of interest of which we should be aware?
No.
Mr. Cosme?
None.
Mr. Martin?
Action that the board may hear involving Garrett Park, the town of Garrett Park, for which I've been involved, I'd have to recuse myself. There's one case in particular on the November agenda for the board that is a Garrett Park property that I've been involved with, and I would have to recuse from that.
Thank you. Ms. Seminario Thornton? Can you hear us?
Yes. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
No, I don't have anything. If something surfaces, I will talk immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Allen?
I have no conflict of interest in this matter. As I indicated earlier, I would bring sort of a fresh mind to these issues. I don't come from any kind of advocacy position in regards to zoning or zoning in the county. I've never taken up a position on anything in my private life. And so I don't think that it would ever be, and plus I think I'm held to certain legal standards as a lawyer for ethical behavior. And if any of those conflict did arise for some strange reason, of course I would be first to advise the proper authority.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Colleagues, I'll open it up. Does anybody have any questions? Nope, seeing no questions. You all did a fabulous job in your responses. On behalf of all of my colleagues, want to express our deepest appreciation for all of you and your willingness to serve. We have a difficult decision to make, and that's a good thing for the county and the council. So we appreciate your willingness, and we will be following up soon.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us on to the next item on the agenda, which has been removed from consent as a standalone item, and that is an action, which is a resolution to address and combat anti-Semitism. I'm going to make a few comments, and then I will seek a motion and second, and then several of my colleagues have requested to speak. I want to begin by acknowledging there is a great deal of emotion in this room right now. We see it, and we feel it, and we see it. I'd like to thank the hundreds of residents that have contacted the council to share their perspective on this resolution. I and my colleagues have learned a great deal over the last several months since this resolution was paused earlier this summer. At its core, it's an effort to stand up to hate and to address and condemn anti-Semitism in our community, in our state, and across this nation. My council colleagues and I have met with residents, faith leaders, and stakeholders who support and oppose moving forward with the resolution. Those meetings directly led to amendments since its original introduction to incorporate the views and perspectives shared by many residents. This non-binding resolution affirms the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's working definition of anti-Semitism as an educational tool and reaffirms the county's commitment to combat anti-Semitism, discrimination, and hate. Experts report that the incidents of harassment, vandalism, and violence against Jewish people are at their highest levels since the 1970s. In Maryland, anti-Semitic incidents are up over 17% from 2020, and here in Montgomery County, 85% of religious bias incidents were anti-Semitic in nature in 2021, although our Jewish residents only make up 10% of our overall population. Today's resolution is one tool we have as legislators to combat hate and discrimination aimed at our Jewish family members, friends, neighbors, and colleagues. We respect and understand that there are differing views on this resolution, and it should not be construed to limit anyone's right to free speech or political debate, which are protected under the First Amendment. Modern forms of anti-Semitism manifest themselves in many ways. However, criticism of the Israeli government policies or actions do not constitute anti-Semitism. That has been explicitly stated in one of the amendments to the resolution, which states that criticism of the Israeli government policies and actions do not constitute anti-Semitism. As a non-binding document, this type of resolution does not call for a public hearing. However, as I said earlier, we have received hundreds of correspondence, and my colleagues and I have met with residents both in favor and against this resolution. The Montgomery County Council has consistently condemned anti-Semitism and is committed to combating all forms of hate and extremism, as we have expressed in previous resolutions and statements. We must continue to stand up to the national wave of anti-Semitism and the hate and discrimination being experienced by Jewish residents. We will work collectively with our faith and community, our faith leaders and community partners, as well as with law enforcement and in our schools to denounce hatred and bigotry of all kinds, so we can continue to build an inclusive community and end the spread of hate, bigotry, and harassment based on race, color, religion, national origin, ethnicity, sex, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, disability, and more. I also want to note that the council received a letter of support from the county's Committee Against Hate Violence, which offered a venue for further discussion on this important issue, as has the Office of Human Rights. This is an extremely welcome suggestion, as today's non-binding resolution to condemn and combat anti-Semitism is just one small step to help support our inclusive community. We know there is much more work to do, and we will continue working with all of you as we recommit ourselves to standing up to hate and condemning anti-Semitism. Can I get a motion to adopt this resolution?
Mr. President, I'd like to move the resolution to address and combat anti-Semitism.
Moved by Councilmember Friedson. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Katz. I know several colleagues would like to speak. We'll start with Councilmember Friedson, followed by Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you, Mr. President. Anti-Semitism is undeniably on the rise, and unfortunately, Montgomery County is no exception. Here in our inclusive, welcoming community, 85% of religious bias incidents target Jews, despite, as Council President noted, Jews making up only 10% of the population. From 2019 to 2021, reported anti-Semitic incidents in Maryland rose an alarming 175%. Right here in Montgomery County, we've seen a Jewish Montessori school harassed and surveilled because of concerns of so-called indoctrination, epithets hurled at Jewish religious students while eating lunch outside and as families walk home from synagogue, and swastikas displayed at and near synagogues as only a few recent examples. Children report being afraid to openly identify as Jewish, even here in Montgomery County. For 3 months, we've received feedback on this resolution. In light of concerns raised, we worked diligently on a series of language modifications to address them by reiterating protection of free speech and political debate, and by affirming the definition as an educational tool rather than adopting or endorsing it. I want to be clear, the passage of this resolution is not a victory. The purpose here was never to win, or for there to be winners and losers. The goal is to do something important and meaningful to help our community better identify and address the rising tide of the oldest form of hatred. There is no true victory until we eliminate all forms of hate and discrimination, including anti-Semitism. Throughout this process, I've seen firsthand why anti-Semitism is so hard to fight, which has reinforced painfully at times, and in a very personal way, the very reason why defining and discussing it is so necessary. Introducing this non-binding resolution was intended to be just the start of a desperately needed conversation about anti-Semitism. It is a growing crisis in our community and across our country, and we have a lot of work to do to better define and understand anti-Semitism so we can adequately combat it in all of its forms. I've spoken with the Montgomery County Committee Against Hate Violence, who, as the Council President noted in their support of this resolution, offered to convene conversations in our community on anti-Semitism. Many of them are here today, and I look forward to working with them along with the Office of Human Rights moving forward to do the critical work that is needed in our community now more than ever. Let me close by saying how grateful I am to Council colleagues for the thoughtful consideration of this resolution and for this body's ongoing commitment to combat anti-Semitism in all of its manifestations and in hatred in all of its forms. This resolution serves as a powerful statement to our community and in many ways is just the start of this very important conversation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I've got Councilmember Jawando, followed by Councilmember Reamer, then Councilmember Rice, and then Councilmember Hucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hate and discrimination have no place in Montgomery County. I'm proud to live in a county and have been born and raised in a county that's as diverse as ours, and in a community that has come together time and time again to denounce and stand up against hate wherever it has arisen. I stand firmly with the Jewish community and unequivocally against anti-Semitism. The recent rise in anti-Semitic attacks and violence and language is troubling and unacceptable. I also understand the concerns that many in our community have expressed about the specific resolution and the process that has led to today's vote. I plan to vote for the resolution because I believe in the overarching principles it stands for, to protect and affirm the rights and safety of our Jewish community. I do so soberly, acknowledging that no matter what the outcome today, harm will be done. I want to express my dismay in the process that led us to today's vote. It's true that we do not typically have public input on resolutions. However, as we have seen from the amount of correspondence and the presence of so many here today, this resolution is on an issue that is deeply important to many, many residents. I know many of the folks in the audience, and all of them that I know believe that we must stand strong against anti-Semitism and hate. And they're on both sides of this resolution. We missed an opportunity here. I believe this council had a duty to find common ground, to further dialogue, and to unite around a shared goal, standing up against anti-Semitism and hatred. Unfortunately, the open and inclusive process that may have led to that outcome, did not happen. And I strongly believe, however, that I must still vote for this resolution because of the larger shared principle and stand against anti-Semitism, even if I don't agree with every word or the process that led to it. The only acceptable message this council can send is voting for this resolution unanimously. But this cannot be the end. I commit and urge all community members in this council and future councils to have future dialogues and come together around a shared understanding so that we can fight hatred, bigotry, racism, and of course, anti-Semitism together. This is a great county. I believe that we can take the lead and do that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. Well, we are all painfully aware that our country is experiencing a rise in anti-Asian and anti-immigrant hate. We see continued racism against black people. We hear constantly about violence against Muslim Americans and against people based on their sexual identity or gender identity, to name just a few examples. All of these forms of hate are all too often expressed through violence, and each is an outrage with its own nature and history and characteristics. Today we're talking about anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. It's a constant presence in our communities, on social media, and in our national discourse. This resolution seeks to provide some light and some guidance about how to understand anti-Semitism. And I recognize that it has been controversial, and that I believe is because it's about speech. And for all of us, our right to free speech is sacred. But the resolution that we are now voting on adds constructive guidance through the amendments that have been made to this version and when compared to the initial version as introduced. I'm supporting this resolution because we strive to live in a democracy that embraces differences and encourages civil debate, where everyone is respected and can participate fully. Anti-Semitism has some unique characteristics which we can identify. It's more than just reprehensible graffiti that we see with overt appeals to Nazism, for example. There are also less explicit forms of anti-Semitism that are harder to pin down, but we should pin them down. In other words, the goal of this resolution is to help distinguish between debate on the issues, or civil discussion, and discussion that breeds, fosters, or foments anti-Semitism. The resolution highlights many examples. For example, charging Jews with conspiring to harm humanity, employing sinister stereotypes and negative character traits. Now, this resolution has been edited and amended in ways that I find helpful and clarifying. I particularly want to draw our attention to number 12 in the resolution, and I'll read this as well. Modern forms of anti-Semitism can manifest through anti-Zionism when denying the Jewish right to existence and self-determination, or employing an anti-Semitic trope. However, criticism of Israeli government policies or actions does not constitute anti-Semitism. For me, that's a very helpful definition. First of all, it rings clear to me that criticizing of Israeli government policies or actions does not constitute anti-Semitism. But second, it provides a helpful way to think about how to understand criticism and help us all be on alert for when that criticism of Israeli policies is accompanied by an anti-Semitic trope. Unfortunately, that's common. Instead of saying, I disagree with Israeli policies, I've often heard people say, Israeli policies are not held to the same standard because Jewish people have influence over our minds. That's not acceptable. I'll refer you to a recent movie called The Occupation of the American Mind. I joined my colleagues to send a letter about this movie because I took the time to watch it. And while there was substantive discussion in the movie, there was something about it that just struck me as very problematic. I couldn't quite put my finger on how to explain it or describe it. And I had conversations with many of my friends who had different views about that movie. But I signed my name to a letter because I felt that it was fostering an unhealthy anti-Semitism. And now, with the language of this resolution, we have in front of us a way to think about that. It's when criticism is accompanied by an anti-Semitic trope. When we see that, we all need to take a stand against it. And that's why I'm joining my colleagues today to support this resolution. Thank you.
Again, I know there is a lot of emotion in this room. I understand and respect it. Okay, we're gonna have to keep going. We've got Councilmember Rice, followed by Councilmember Hucker, then Councilmember Navarro, and then Councilmember Glass.
You're making a mistake.
Councilmember Rice.
Thank you very much, Council President. The idea of denouncing anti-Semitic rhetoric does not mean the silencing of the criticism of the Israeli-Palestine conflict on both sides. Typically, we as a council try to stay away from proclamations that involve geopolitical issues, as the council typically plays no role in that space. And I am appreciative of the changes that have tamped down that messaging. I understand that many in our community, many in this room, may still feel as though this resolution goes beyond just denouncing of anti-Semitic hate. I can tell you that is not my belief, nor my intention. We have seen a significant uptick in religious discrimination, hate crimes, and biases across all sectors of our community, and we need to respond. Just this morning, I was informed about messaging that was placed on one of the overpasses for our highways that is a shining example of the hatred and the vitriol that exists in our community. We must stand up against all of that hate, united as one, protecting each other and understanding although we may have differences, we can express those differences. We can express those differences in belief and still be respectful of one another. The issue is not whether or not there should be a resolution condemning anti-Semitism. We have passed many in the past. We have passed resolutions condemning hatred against our Muslim community as well. The question is whether or not the IHRA working definition should be a part of this resolution. I will tell you that what gave me comfort, and what I hope gives you comfort as well, is that the resolution is very explicit in its language in saying that this is an educational tool. An educational tool is something that can be interpreted by the individual. This, I feel, will help us to have a better dialogue around the things that all of our community are experiencing. As chair of the Education and Culture Committee, I believe that having as much information in front of people as possible is important so that people can make informed decisions. And while those may take sides as to where they fall in terms of those individual decisions, the reality remains that any discrimination, that any bias towards anyone is something that is not acceptable here in Montgomery County. That is the reason why I will support the resolution.
Thank you so much. All right, we have Councilmember Hucker, followed by Councilmember Navarro, and then Council Vice President Glass. Councilmember Hucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's critical that the council continually speak out and take action to stand with anyone who experiences hatred, bigotry, and discrimination in Montgomery County or elsewhere. As long as there is hatred, bigotry, and discrimination, we have to speak out and work against it. Every member of this council is appalled specifically by the rising anti-Semitism in Montgomery County and around the nation. The numbers are shocking and they're unacceptable, and the council has spoken out vigorously, repeatedly against it, and we have provided security grants, additional policing, and other forms of protection and social services for our Jewish residents and our synagogues and temples. We all wish we didn't have to. We are living in very dangerous and very troubling times. There's no controversy regarding our record of speaking out and acting against anti-Semitism and our commitment to continue to do so. But I have heard so many concerns about the definition in this resolution from organizations representing Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, and other faiths, and representing residents from Palestine, from many Muslim nations, and every area around the globe. And I've heard from many neighbors and constituents and our own county staff of Jewish and other faiths, people who have contributed greatly to our county for decades, and whom I respect greatly, who share those concerns about the definition and are unclear about how it will be used and what its meaning is moving forward. So I appreciate the efforts by my colleagues to amend the resolution to attempt to clarify the intention of the resolution. And I think we have to be vigilant to make sure the definition is not misused, to chill any speech moving forward in the future. That is not what this county's about. That is not what this country's about. So many residents of all faiths in Montgomery County share our goal of fighting anti-Semitism and hatred. And many of them feel that so far we have missed an opportunity to also engage them and to use this resolution to bring people together and to unite residents of the county rather than to divide them. I think we all agree that we're strongest when we engage everyone and we speak as one county and one voice. So I hope this discussion doesn't end today, because anti-Semitism won't end today and other forms of hatred won't either. I hope we still look for opportunities to hold additional public discussions after this morning to raise awareness of anti-Semitism in ways that encourage residents of all faiths to engage in our efforts to combat hatred head on. And I believe that we'll move forward today to continue to do the work to make Montgomery County a bastion of tolerance and respect. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councilmember Navarro, followed by Council Vice President Glass.
Thank you, Mr. President. So as I conclude my service here on Montgomery County Council, one of the things that has been most important has been the opportunities to collaborate with the community, with my colleagues, with the administration, to stand up every single time we confront any act of hate. And I personally and my staff have been the target of such hate as the first immigrant ever to be elected to this body. And so it's not lost on me the fact that there are so many sentiments out there, because unfortunately we have seen an extraordinary rise in hate. And for a long time, many of us watched this as it was happening on the national level, praying and hoping that it wasn't happening here in our county, but it has. And for many of us on a personal level, it hurts very deeply, because yes, there are many geopolitical issues that affect many of us personally. In my case, being from Venezuela, we have seen an exodus of over 7 million people who are fleeing oppression and human rights violations. And so there are so many personal feelings throughout this extraordinarily diverse county, and we cannot just step up and celebrate during festivals and during wonderful arts and cultural events our diversity. We must stand up also to protect what makes us such an incredible place, and I think the example throughout the nation. And so yes, at first it was very clear that there needed to be some work done with the language, because the last thing we want to do as leaders is to foment more division. And when we worked on our Racial Equity and Social Justice Act in 2019, we took our time to engage in community conversations throughout the county. And we spent a year doing that, and it obviously was not enough. It's still a work in progress. And so I echo the sentiments of my colleagues calling for a mechanism to pursue that type of dialogue in an intentional way, because it is clear that it's needed. Because at the end of the day, what we want to do is foment more unity and not division. In this particular case, when we see that bullet in my colleague, Councilman President's remarks that in Maryland, anti-Semitic incidents are up over 17% from 2020. And here at home in Montgomery County, 85.3% of religious bias incidents were anti-Semitic in nature in 2021. Although our Jewish residents make up only 10% of the population. We do have a problem, and we must find ways to engage in dialogue that includes different nuances or different things that are considered many times dog whistles, and utilize them as tool for that dialogue and that education. It doesn't preclude us from also engaging in conversation regarding other members of our community that have different points of view or have different experiences. It adds to that. And so even though, again, I will join the chorus that said that I would have preferred for us to have more opportunities for dialogue and constructive interaction, I will be supporting the resolution because a lot of work has been done to amend and clarify that free speech is always protected, but that it, once again, we cannot be blind to what is happening here in our own county. And we must step up and do that. So thank you very much for letting me express my views. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Vice President Glass.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I appreciate everybody being here to engage in this really important conversation. And as an openly gay man and as a Jew, I understand pointedly clear the world that we're living in, the amount of hate that is out there, the opinions people have about me, about many of us, about who we are, who we aspire to be. And the reason we're all here in this room today is because we want the world to be a better place. There should be no disagreement about that.
We agree with that.
And what we're trying to work through today and over the last 3 months is how to manifest the world we want here in Montgomery County. 4 of the 10 most diverse communities in the country are here in Montgomery County. 1.1 million people within our 500 square miles. Hundreds of community members have reached out to me over the last 3 months to talk about this and to talk about safety and acceptance and well-being. And I've met with nearly everybody who's wanted to talk with me about this resolution, recognizing that the process has not been perfect. And the conversation actually started way before then. This council, this county government has a long-standing tradition of standing up against hate. And back in February of 2021, this council was united in adopting a resolution that I introduced, standing up to anti-Semitism, particularly in the wake of the January 6th insurrection, when people brought swastikas into the United States Capitol, a stain on our history. This is what we're dealing with. And since that resolution was passed, I organized a number of roundtables that included so many of the groups that are here to talk about how we can concretely make people safe in our community. And when this resolution that's before us now was introduced, I didn't think it was perfect. And so that's why I had conversations with those of you who are having conversations right now.
If we can just let the Council Vice President speak, please. Thank you.
And because there were many concerns about the freedom of speech, we made sure that language was added to this resolution. Not only does the resolution state that nothing in this resolution should be construed to limit anyone's right to freedom of speech or political debate, which are protected under the First Amendment, but the most recent addition, the most recent amendment to this resolution says that criticism of Israeli government policies or actions does not construe anti-Semitism. And it is not lost on me, and I hope it's not lost on any of you, that as we're having this debate right now, as we are having this debate right now, Mr. President,
I'd like to please humbly request that people allow Council Vice President to finish his presentation. Thank you.
as we are talking about this right now, the people of Israel are going to the polls to determine who they want to lead their government, who they want in their Knesset. That is happening right now. And
okay, just go ahead and finish. Almost done. Okay. I apologize. The next person that speaks, we're going to have to ask you to please leave. So let's just please finish. Allow Council Vice President Glass to finish speaking. Council Vice President Glass.
And so as...
Ma'am, please. Understood. I'd like to go ahead, Council Vice President Glass. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Okay.
Hypocrisy. Shame on you guys. All of you guys. Hypocrisy.
So, as the residents of Israel go to the polls, we're talking right now, right here, about how to make everybody feel safe in our community.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you for speaking. If you could just please be quiet. Thank you.
As has been noted by my colleagues, and as I noted in our previous conversation, which you all had the pleasure of listening to with Commander Augustine, who was just nominated to be an assistant chief at MCPD, 56% of hate crimes here in Montgomery County are race-based, 24% are religious-based, and 16% are based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And what we're talking about right now is how to make sure everybody feels welcome, safe, seen, and accepted in our community. And today, this resolution is just a continuation of that conversation, allowing everybody to have their First Amendment rights unabridged. And we are going to continue, after we dispense of this resolution, working in more concrete terms, in more concrete fashion of how to take steps to make everybody feel safe. This is a resolution, and the work that is before us is to take actual action to make sure everybody is healthy, safe, and protected. And I look forward to engaging in that conversation with all of you as well.
All right, thank you, colleagues, for speaking. We have a motion and second. All those in favor of the resolution, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you. We're going to take a short 5-minute recess and then come back. All right, we resume our council session today, and we'll now discuss our consent calendar. Can I get a motion to accept the consent calendar?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Rice. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Navarro. I wanted to highlight one item for colleagues, which is item N, which will be discussed in the Health and Human Services Committee. I want to thank Councilmember Navarro, who brought to our attention the need and importance of ensuring that organizations who are working in the immigrant space and have stepped forward to do some excellent work. There are some new and emerging organizations that have been doing excellent work, and we want to make sure, and we will discuss in committee, to ensure that there be some flexibility in those funds so that new and emerging organizations may be able to apply. And so I'd like to appreciate her leadership on that. And are there any other questions or comments regarding the consent calendar? Hearing none, all those in favor of the consent calendar, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous. All right, with that, we are adjourned to our recess. We will recommence with public hearings starting at 1:30. We have a proclamation at 1, which I'm giving. Okay, 1:15 by Councilmember Navarro. Sorry, a little discombobulated.